across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. Happy Friday. How are you doing? Looking forward to keeping you company for the next 3 hours, bringing you a smorgasbord of tasty little current affairs morsels with a great side serving of incredible guests and a cocktail of opinions to wash it all down with. So brace yourself, ladies and gentlemen. Buckle up. We're about to have some fun. And if you want to join the jamboree, the number to call is 0344 499 1000. It is your normal network rate. You can also send me a WhatsApp on that number, or indeed leave me a voice note on WhatsApp on that number, 0344 499 1000. If you'd rather send a good old-fashioned text message, the number is 87222 if you're going to do that. Write the word talk before you type out your thoughts, s'il vous plaît. OK, let's get cracking, because I've harvested a huge number of stories with the help of my erudite and ever industrious producer Ted this morning, and we've got a lot to be getting through, so no time like the present. Let's welcome aboard HMS Common Sense the marvellous, magnificent, fantastical Philip Kisley, Senior Fellow of the New Culture Forum. Good morning, Philip. Always a pleasure to have you. How are you doing?
Alex, thank you. That's so lovely. That's the nicest thing anybody's ever said to me in 54 years.
What, that you're marvellous, magnificent and fantastical?
Exactly.
Well, you are. I'm sure everybody agrees. Right, do you know what isn't marvellous or magical or fantastical? It's the fact that despite women winning the case in the High Courts, that, well, they get to be women and they get to have toilets for women with only women going in them, it turns out the Equality and Human Rights Commission has basically said, yep, must have single-sex spaces. But if a person in a frock walks in who doesn't really look that much like a woman, well, don't ask them.
Yeah, it just feels as though there are several kinds of safeguarding, aren't there? There are those of us who actually want to do safeguarding, who are serious about it for women and children. There are those people who don't want safeguarding at all, right? Because they're predators. And there are the other people who tend to be in the institutions, who tend to make the rules, who tend to be in academia, which will talk about safeguarding, but will avoid the safeguarding issues and will not confront the main issues when it comes to safeguarding. It's very simple, right? Men should not be in women's toilets. They have no place in sports. They should not be represented as women in statistics. That's massively important, right? Because that has huge health implications running for decades. It's very simple. If you do not understand that, you are either stupid or dishonest, but very probably, Alex, both. And I think that's the situation we are in with the powers that be.
I mean, this is the thing. I thought that the ECHR's ruling was black and white. In fact, I thought that what they had put on Bridget Phillipson's desk was quite clear. Only biological women can use women's spaces. That's it. Full stop. End of discussion. Yet it sat on Bridget Phillipson's desk, because obviously she didn't like that. Sat on her desk for Lord knows how many months, and now it's come out the other side, and that is still in place. But there's this whole wishy-washy area about, well, you know, if you can't tell, or if it's, you know, it'll be too busy to... and now we're going to have a situation, essentially, where... in theory, trans-identifying people should use the disabled toilet, which I think is probably the right way of doing things if they really don't want to use men's bathrooms. Although I never understand why the onus is on women. You know,
no, it's always on women. Yeah.
If Derek wants to put on a tutu and trot around in high heels, then, right, Derek, you crack on. The men should be more accepting. They should make Derek feel comfortable in the men's toilets. Why do we have to always be the ones to accommodate things?
It's always the same, isn't it? Whenever you talk about these cultural changes, these cultural issues, and they are always framed as progressive. The other one that I'm thinking about, as you were just saying that, is mass immigration, of course. Okay. When these cultural issues come into the mainstream and they are debated, it's always women who have to make way. It's always women and children who are harmed by these things. Because mainly, one, these things, these ideas, these concepts, these theories are stupid to begin with. If you have a penis, you are a man. No amount of frilly knickers is going to change that, unfortunately, okay? But two, the whole idea that you can swap centuries of working through who and what we are and coming to some kind of agreement of what works out there. We had a wonderful, civilized, safe society because it was built on the Burkean contract between generations, okay? It was built on that understanding, that giving over, that sense of this is for the people who are coming after us, and we want them to be safe and we want them to be happy. All of that immediately is thrown out of the window, probably about 30 or 40 years ago with critical theory. And these stupid, untested concepts that come from postmodernism, Marxism, and political Marxism, communism, all of these things that manifestly don't work, right? All of these things are just thrown out there, put in the institutions. Yeah, we're going to try this. It might work. Yeah, of course it's going to work. If you don't like it, you're a racist, you're a bigot, you're a misogynist, you're transphobic, you're Islamophobic. No, I'm not. I'm just sensible. I know what works and I know what doesn't work because I've got an IQ that's over 60.
Also, I've got a moral compass, which tends to help. It seems a lot of this stuff just seems to want to willingly break apart, cultural mores that have stood the test of time for millennia and made, at one point, the Western world the most advanced place on the planet. Talking about all the wonderful things that we have learned as we have grown into a multicultural, culturally enriched society is, we've learned from the best from Southeast Asia how to rig elections, haven't we? It seems, as it turns out, that 5 people have now been arrested in Greater Manchester, Tameside Borough Council, which is in the heart of Angela Rayner's constituency, who carried out a sort of, putting fake candidates on registers in order to split the vote. And here come the names, of course. Atta ul Razul is one of them. Apparently these discussions happened in Angela Rayner's kitchen. But she wasn't there. She knows nothing about it. She was nothing to do with this. Philip, I know, you know, any of us working in politics knows that the Labour Party have been playing this game with the Muslim community for decades. For decades. They've turned a blind eye, frankly, to things like ballot stuffing, postal vote fraud, family voting. That's a nice name for it, isn't it? Yay, let's all get together as a family and march someone under duress down to the polling station and force them to put an X in a certain box. Oh, how lovely. Family voting. But now I wonder what they're going to call this one, creating fake candidates. That's got to have a nice turn of phrase to it, because it's got to be good, surely, because it's a practice we've adopted from another country, it seems.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, this oinkophobia, all of these terrible places are obviously much better than our very stable society that I outlined just a few minutes ago. I just say, right, I'm the first one to wriggle out of anything if I can, okay? But if something is hatched in my kitchen, which is just there, I'm probably responsible for it, okay? Especially if I've let those people into my house knowingly. It doesn't matter whether I was there or not. Okay, so what we have here is decades, actually, of whether it's acknowledged, whether it's understood, but it's a kind of malpractice, isn't it, that has been going on in Manchester for such a long time.
In Manchester, in Birmingham, in Peterborough, in Tower Hamlets, you name it. I've seen it with my own eyes. You've had, people in Tower Hamlets arrested for this stuff. You've had a guy who was an electoral agent in Peterborough jailed for this stuff. It's been going on for a long time. And from what I've heard from various people, it isn't just the Labour Party who have benefited from the Muslim voting bloc and turned a blind eye to things that may or may not have been going on. I do have to sort of, interject myself now and do a statement from a Labour Party spokesman. No evidence has been presented of any Labour Party involvement in these allegations. Funny, it says no evidence has been presented.
We didn't do it.
We categorically reject any suggestion that the party was involved. The local Labour team is focused on what really matters, delivering for residents and protecting services, not playing political games. We're unable to provide any further comment while police inquiries are underway. Meanwhile, Greater Manchester Police said following initial inquiries last week, we've launched a full investigation into the allegations. The work is specifically investigating the process of how candidates were put forward and represented in the ward, and if this adhered to the relevant legislation and electoral procedures. We're working closely with the Electoral Commission and local partners as part of our inquiries. Well, I've got a little tip to the police forces around the country. If I were you, I would probably have a look into all sorts of goings on, present and historic, when it comes to this sort of electoral malpractice, because it's endemic at this point.
Yeah, I mean, this is part of an ongoing saga, and whether this turns out to be true or false, in many ways is immaterial, because what has happened over the last 30 years and culminated in the Labour Party saying they didn't want a national inquiry into Pakistani rape gangs in northern towns kind of tells you everything you need to know. Now, if you look at Greater Manchester from the elections, the local elections I'm talking about now, a couple of weeks ago, the centre is green, completely green. So you've got all of these young, woke, blue-haired lunatic types voting green. They don't have that constituency anymore, okay? They don't have those people anymore, the progressives, the young progressives. On the outskirts, the Oldham, Rochdale, all of those places, now those are going either independent, worryingly, or the other places are going reform. So Labour Party have completely lost it in Manchester. I think there are one or two places. I think Bury is still Labour. But the rest of it, if you look at the map, they've completely lost it. But yet, still, Alex, they are going for this mythical Muslim bloc vote that they simply do not have anymore. That has gone to other people, and yet they will still keep playing these games, keep pushing and pushing and pushing. And Rachel Reeves just the other day telling us how to be British. That's not very British. How dare you? How dare you even think about telling me how to be British, telling me about and I am from Manchester, I'm from Bury, me about my identity, telling me about culture. You've been trying to deconstruct it for you and your
after the Labour Party, being British is distinctly not being British at all. By the way, ladies and gentlemen, we have at 11:25 on the programme Raja Meyer, who is an expert in this stuff. He has seen this stuff going on for decades. He knows everything. He's a huge whistleblower on this topic, and he is going to blow the doors off, as they say. So you want to stay tuned for that, because it's going to be, I think, quite a eyebrow-raising interview. Let's talk in terms of eyebrow-raising. Not really, because it's just very typical. The Green Party's candidate for the Makerfield by-election has had to quit just hours after being unveiled, because he said when that horrific incident of the arson attack against ambulances in Golders Green took place, there he was, straight on the old socials, wasn't he, talking about how it was some sort of false flag, because, clearly the only one who wants to blow up stuff belonging to Jewish people is Israel itself. I mean, the thing is, this isn't just a one-off. This isn't a little rogue, bad apple, one that accidentally slipped through the net. Most of the Green Party think like this. I'm certain of it. Even if you look at some of the past social media posts of their deputy leader, Mothin Ali, there's been some pretty choice theories abundant on his timeline.
Yeah, there are a couple of things with this. I mean, you can look at the other Greens and what they've posted and what they've shared. One said, ramming a synagogue isn't anti-Semitism, it's revenge, that kind of stuff. But this character is really interesting because, one, he's a nurse, and two, he's a child safeguarding specialist. There's your problem, Alex. There's your problem with this stuff, because it's covered by the institutions, it's covered by the NHS, it's covered by this horrible World Care, right? They are the absolute opposite, and this conspiratorial anti-Semitism. You can imagine it, can't you? You know, the meeting, they've got rid of him now, but you can imagine how it probably went something like, you know, you got to go, you know, you're a liability, but you know, not as far as I'm concerned. I think you're great. And they actually said, we wish him well. You know, they wish him well in his genocidal anti-Semitic conspiracy theory. So we have a real problem here, and it isn't the usual problem of what the problem used to be with anti-Semitism, which was lumpen in the street, National Front 1977 stuff. I mean, there's that element as well, but now it's in the institutions.
Oh, yeah.
It's covered by this word care, and it's intellectualized. In some respects, I'm not saying this is sophisticated, but in some respects it's sophisticated. It's a shape-shifting beast, and it's just something that we have to fight all the time, because I come back to this word civilized again. If we don't live in a civilized country. If this country isn't safe for Jews, then by definition it isn't a civilized country.
We don't live in a civilized country anymore. Pockets of it are, but frankly we do not. That's what I've come to realise. This country is riddled with people who directly invert morality, who think that, you know, sort of someone from Israel, member of the IDF, who's done their military training, young age, has gone out, risked their life to defend their nation, which is surrounded by hostile states, is somehow evil, and shouting kill, kill, kill them is somehow good. And then when you've got the sort of, you know, fetishized pervert in the frock screaming about Gaza, that person should be beatified. That person's amazing. It's just a direct inversion of morality. Good people are evil, evil people are good. Although I do think, Philip, that we have potentially reached peak woke, and we might be climbing back down the other side. That is what we're actually going to be talking about just after this break.
The offer to be the voice of a sheep.
Yes, you can only dream, really.
Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser. Well, how much of Rip does your husband in real life have about him?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's a man.
He's a dude. Kirsty and Phil.
Can we talk about one other thing?
We talk about loads of things. It's an interview.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, as I teased, as we say in the business, just before the break, I want to ask Philip whether he thinks that on some level we might have reached peak woke. A couple of stories for this segment that caught my eye. Now, let's start off with this one, which is essentially all this stuff, unconscious bias training, emotional check-ins, Well, it's probably had its better day. In fact, one CEO, which is Ryan Breslow from Bolt, has got so frustrated with his company's human resources team, he sacked the lot of them. He says they created too many problems that didn't exist. Do you know what, Philip? I mean, look, I think you need one sensible HR person because everyone needs to sort of understand, you know, some degree of employee protection, drawing up contracts and all the rest of it. But all of these lanyard industries, I'd get rid of a lot of them. I mean, PR would be first on my list. I think PR is the most lanyardy, pointless waste of money in the entire world. You know, if the boss of an airline company has to go face the media, the boss of an airline company, put your big boy pants on and go and speak to them. Why do you need somebody who's going to have to tell you to use pronouns and problematic and fostering inclusion, for crying out loud? Get rid of all of it. It's just a drain on the economy. It's non-useful. It doesn't make anything, doesn't advance anything. It's just a blimmin' bureaucratic boondoggle. So I say, round of applause, Ryan Breslow on this one. Do you think other people will follow suit?
Well, I hope so. Let's say that for the moment, and I'm cautious for several reasons. I think the guy there just got it completely right when he said they make problems, okay, for themselves to solve, and that's essentially what the industry is. It shouldn't be called HR anymore. It should just revert back to personnel, and it should just be dealing with people and any legal issues that arise. So all of this nonsense has grown up, but it's grown up over the last 20 years or so because there is a whole class of people, the lanyard people, who have done useless degrees and cannot do anything else and are just fed into this self-perpetuating industry that is just for and of itself. And all of these middle-class, chattering-class little people would have nothing else to do if it wasn't for this. So that's my concern, that this swell of people are just, one, just useless because they're not qualified to do anything. But two, it is in their interest, and these are the people with power, actually. They're from moneyed backgrounds, they're at least middle class and often upper middle class, and it's in their interest for this to perpetuate. So I think common sense is kicking in a little bit, but I think what will happen is we'll go into a different era where we'll still have it, but it will have its wings clipped.
Yeah, I do think we're sort of getting around to the other side of it now because, well, in a cost of living crisis, you know, companies being taxed to the hilt can't afford to pay for 1,000 people deciding what particular colour lanyard staff must wear the next day. DR, get rid of it. PR, get rid of it. 80% of HR, get rid of it. Anything that involves a blimmin' lanyard, gone. I hate lanyardists.
I think what's going to happen is that companies are just, as you say, economically, for very, very sensible economic reasons, they're just going to jettison these people because, one, they can't afford to keep them economically, but also they are harmful to the companies they work for. All of these ideas, they've been tested. You know, if you're bringing Stonewall in to foist these horrible ideas on people, that is going to divide your workforce. These ideas are, one, untested, and two, actually harmful. So you don't want those things. But I think as we progress into the rest of the decade and into the following decade, I think the institutions are going to shrink because they cannot continue growing in the way they are because they are useless. And let's just take education as a key example, actually. All of these useless degrees, they are going to just fall by the wayside. The universities are going to shrink because really you don't need to go to university to do an art degree. All you need is AI. You need grok and you can do one, okay? You just need access to the internet. So all of this stuff is like the last dying days of this horrible era. And I think we're going into a new era. It won't disappear, but as I say, it will be massively reduced, and we can only celebrate that, Alex.
I think of, like, during the course of the week, the revelations about blimmin' HS2. I just cannot get over HS2. It is a farce at this point. And the amount it costs, more than sending a blimmin' rocket ship into space. And you know, don't you, that, you know, and also by the time that thing's finally built, we won't even need it anyway. We'll have flying carpets and stuff like that, hover cars, time travel. But you know, the bill of HS2, I bet 50% of that is on blimmin' lanyards. Just PR, HR, consultants. It's just a nonsense. But I think one of the reasons this stuff is circling the plug hole is because the overquoted Overton window has shifted. We're finally able now, in a measured and pragmatic way, to talk about things which, quite frankly, we were absolutely forbidden to even bring up. And I want to talk about this story. It's a really disturbing, horrible story. Little disclaimer there. So if you've got young'uns with you, you might want to make sure that, you know, they've got earmuffs. This is the story of two gay men who adopted a baby, a 13-month-old little kid called Preston Davey. Jamie Varley has been accused of the murder of said baby. He's alleged to have routinely sexually, physically and emotionally abused this wee thing that he had adopted with his partner. When you look at some of the evidence, the trial's taking place right now at Preston Crown Court. Both men deny charges. When you look at the things that have come up in that court case, one of the things was the injuries to this little baby and photographs taken of the little thing flopped over in his cot, face forward. It's sick. And the reason I wanted to talk about this story, it is so sick. It's one that, you know, when you read the detail of this case, one of the reasons I wanted to bring it up is because, frankly, this is not the first time. There have been stories in America, in other parts of the Western world. This is not the first time that two gay men have adopted a baby and sexually abused it. Now, I am not saying that gay men who've adopted babies do that. The vast majority do not, and I'm sure the vast majority are very good parents. And the way I see things is if there's a poor little kid who has absolutely no family, no home, is an orphan, is abandoned, and two decent, hard-working, healthy-minded individuals want to put a roof over that baby's head, give them an education, bring them up in a safe and secure and protected environment, then I applaud that. But we've reached the stage now. You've got men, you know, wanting to create their own babies in surrogate women. I think that is disgusting, personally. I'm sorry, but I do. I sat on the coach the other day and they had their very first LGBTQA+ fertility conference. And I'm sorry, if you can't biologically have a baby because you're two men, just adopt if you really need to, but ideally don't. But also, we have, I think, in order to bow down at the altar of political correctness, failed to look into the impact of these policies in terms of safeguarding, looking at the potential trends when it comes to the protection of children, because we know, don't we, that you know, the highest amount of child abuse often takes place in homes where there is a stepfather. That is statistically borne out. I say that as someone who was brought up with a stepfather who I worship the ground he walks on, by the way. So people need to know that. I'm not... But we've got to get real about this stuff. It's not okay that things like this are happening. And I think we need to have a conversation. We need to look at the data and we need to ask some very serious questions, because when it comes down to the safeguarding of kids, an adult's discomfort doesn't even come into the equation for me. Not important.
No, I mean, it's an awful story, and I read the story this morning, and I know you were upset, okay, and I had kind of tears in my eyes when I was reading this, because it reminded me of baby P in particular, and it reminded me of the little girl who was abused recently and the father fled to Pakistan. It reminded me of so many stories I've read over the years. It reminded me of the poor kids in Oldham, Rochdale, all of these kids who are failed by a system that is bound by political correctness, and the evidence in front of the professionals' eyes, the evidence in this case, the evidence in all of these cases is just appalling, and yet they ignore it because, one, they're frightened of being called racist, okay? Two, they are fully bought into the ideas surrounding this stuff, political correctness, inclusion, okay? Protected characteristics. So they're half blind anyway. So it's both of those things together. And there is a collusion, and it's not just in the care industries. It's right through. It's in politics. It's in academia. So it's policy. It's ideas. All of these things conspire. And it comes back to what I first talked about. It's about safeguarding. Safeguarding gone out of the window. If you've got political correctness, if you've got cultural sensitivities, you cannot look after children. It's one or the other, right?
Exactly.
It's one or the other.
Exactly. I mean, this is what lanyardism does, isn't it? This is lanyardism and the dire effects of lanyardism, because you're not allowed to turn around and ask difficult questions or look at cultural trends. In the same way, when it comes to women's safety, we are often denied raw data on who the perpetrators of sexual offences are by nationality, when actually if we looked at that data, had that data and scrutinised that data, we'd be able to make decisions that would keep women safe. And this is about keeping children safe. Lanyardism, as far as I can tell, is one of the most dangerous things in Western society. It's got to go.
It's completely got to go. It's one of those things, a test for all of this stuff. It's, you know, if you go 50 years into the future, when people look back on this era and they see how we failed children, how we failed women, how we've purposely, as a society, failed the most vulnerable people, then that is a kind of insanity, isn't it? You know, Douglas Murray years ago called it the madness of crowds, didn't he? And we do suffer from this collective insanity. And I was talking about that, you know, that green story we were just talking about a minute ago. But I used to think, when I was at school and when I was at university, I used to think, how on earth could something like Nazi Germany happen? Right? I never used to think it could happen because I lived in a society that was a million miles from that. Now I know precisely how it can happen. And I know how precisely ideology, bad, poisonous ideas can put people at risk and can actively target the most vulnerable people in society. It's sickening. I think we're all getting sick of it, right? Yep. I think we're sick to the back teeth of it, and we want something done about it, Alex.
Oh, I think, like I said, I really do feel like we might have sort of reached peak lanyardism. I hope and I pray. Actually, talking about, you know, how did Nazi Germany happen and the madness of crowds? One of the oldest stories in circulation, the trial of Jesus of Nazareth. You know, the crowd wanted to save a murderer because of a whipped-up frenzy. They put the best human being ever to walk the planet to death. It's an age-old story, I'm afraid. But anyway, Philip, thank you so much for joining us. Always a pleasure to chew the cud with you. Right, we're going to take a short break. If you've got any comments, then bring it on. Do you love lanyardism? Do you wear a lanyard? 0344 499 1000. I'm sure you don't, because you wouldn't be listening to this station if you were with the lanyard crew. I know. You can send me WhatsApp on that number as well. 87222 is the number to send a text message. Write the word talk before you text. And here's a little pun for you. Perhaps wokery will be hanged by its own lanyard. If you know the original expression, that might make sense. Anyway, I'm back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Remember, guns don't kill people, lanyards do. On that note, let's stick with the sort of what we hope might be the crest of wokery, and hopefully it's all going to go down the proverbial toilet, although some of his advocates are clinging on to it with white knuckles, aren't they? Here's thinking about you, Bridget Phillipson, because despite the Equality and Human Rights Commission producing long-awaited code of practice saying that there has to be single-sex spaces, that women's toilets are for biological women. Done, dusted, clear as day, that's that. As we know, those guidelines landed on Bridget Phillipson's desk and, well, she didn't really like them. She sat on them for a long time, didn't she? And now she's come out with her own twist on this, her recommendations based on these guidelines. And she's basically reinforced the idea that you shouldn't challenge trans women about their gender. So if there's a jock in a frock who comes into the toilet and he's not supposed to be there because, you know, the High Court have decided this, Equality and Human Rights Commission have decided this, it's, you know, basically carved in stone now. No. They can still walk in and you're not allowed to say anything. So what is the point in having law if we're just going to ignore it? Let's speak now to Susan Smith, Director for Women Scotland. Now, on the surface of it, Susan, it's a victory, and you guys campaigned so long and so hard on behalf of all of us, not just in the United Kingdom, but frankly around the world, who have had to try and tolerate this absolute rubbish. And yet Phillipson thinks it's okay to just ride roughshod over it. I mean, this is hamstringing women. It's putting them back in a dangerous situation because we know that men will, you know, try and get into our spaces anyway. They're too emboldened now. They've got used to it. They like being challenging. I think they do it to be anarchic, quite frankly, and to make people uncomfortable. And so I think a great many people would just still carry on doing what they did before. And now she's turned around and said, well, whatever you do, don't ask anybody about their gender.
I don't think the code's saying that, actually, because it does say quite specifically that you can ask people about their sex, and that there are justifications for doubting someone's sex, and that's based on the things you would assume, like their appearance and, you know, how they talk and their anatomy. So I think you know, if you have a good reason to say that's a bloke over there, I don't think there's any issue. It's a very odd line in the code about not sometimes not needing to ask, but I think that's probably because most of the time we don't need to ask. We just know who's male and who's female. So I don't think anybody should be deterred by this. I think fundamentally what that code says is that men shouldn't be in women's spaces, and if you think they are, you have the right to tell them to get out.
Okay, that is good. That is more reassuring. I mean, the guidance states it's unlikely to be either practical or appropriate to approach any particular individual to make inquiries about their sex in relation to facilities such as toilets. It's still a bit unclear to me, but the problem I have is what happens now if a man does just, you know, saunter into women's toilets and the women say, excuse me, are you a woman? And what you see a lot of them doing is they just go, you know, they sort of, you know, swagger on in because they want to upset women, frankly, and will, you know, just ignore women anyway. What then? Where does that leave us? Do these people get in trouble with the law?
Yeah, I think the thing about, you know, it might not be appropriate. I think that's probably going back to this whole stupid transactivist argument about how are you going to police toilets? Are you going to have, you know, they always like to say, are you going to have genital inspectors? I mean, I think probably what it's saying is you do not need to have somebody at the door saying, and what is your sex? And yes, you can go in there, you go in there. But if somebody walks in who is clearly and obviously a man, and you know they're a man, you actually don't need to ask their sex. You can just go, oi, get out.
Right, but what are the repercussions if they say no?
Well, I think I think again in the code, it does make it clear that you have got the ability to tell them to go if you have due grounds for. And look, we all know what sex people are. It's very, very rare that we are mistaken on somebody's sex. And the code also gives provision for those cases where you might have women who have taken a lot of testosterone who might make other women uncomfortable in a space, that service providers can have facilities whereby they say, no, it's not appropriate for you to be in a women-only space as well. So I think, in general, it's doing the right things, but I think perhaps some of the language is a bit confusing, and what concerns me is that perhaps some of the trans activists will jump on that and try to exploit it and go down this route of, oh, you can't tell, how will you know, which of course is the argument they've made for so long, and it obscures the fact that everybody knows what sex they are. We all know what sex we are, and we need to start to be honest about that and to understand that other people in society have rights. And trans activists for so long have decided that women don't have rights and they can invade spaces at will.
I mean, what I want to understand about this guidance is it's given women the right to ask the question, and that is good. I mean, it's ridiculous that was up for grabs anyway, quite frankly. But what I want to know is if you have men who are flagrantly flouting the laws, being provocative, will they face any sort of prosecution? What is their punishment? Because once upon a time, if a bloke in a frock went into a girl's changing rooms, he'd probably be arrested for voyeurism. I just have a feeling that even though we've got this now, which protects us being able to ask the question or to make a demand, a bit like the Darlington nurses, that won't come to pass in, hopefully in a hospital with nurses changing rooms ever again. But I just, my worry is this stuff has got so baked in that I don't know if people flouting the rules are going to face any kind of repercussions.
No, I think that's a real worry, because you're right. A man going into a women's changing room, they're going to be going in there for purposes of voyeurism or exposure, and that is a crime, and that it should be dealt with accordingly. But unfortunately, I think there has been this real rollback and this fear, especially with people in authority like the police, and they won't take action against these people. So I think, on an individual basis, it's going to be very hard to know what's going to happen to them, because obviously the code can't cover that, because the code is about service providers, so it's their responsibility. If you know that your gym is allowing men into the female changing room, you can ask the EHRC to take action against the gym. But the EHRC can't take action against the individual. So that is going to be something that I think will have to be a broader point that comes out of this, how authorities are going to deal with these individuals who constantly transgress.
My worry is, and we didn't bring you on to talk about this, but as you're on, I wouldn't mind asking you if you're across this story. Because I think this is appalling. This is the case of a teenage gang who lured little girls, tinies, 15 and 13, into an underpass, raped them, filmed it, laughed as they filmed it, and the judge prosecuting the pair basically said, oh, you've behaved so well. Oh, you haven't done anything bad before. Basically let him off, as far as I can tell. And I just think this is madness. This is madness. Women, girls are not protected until we start seeing prosecutions for men encroaching in their spaces, assaulting them, attacking them. We need to see real punishments. And carries on from what I was saying about if a man in a dress goes into women's toilets, what are going to be the consequences to him? Well, in this particular case, and I know they're young kids, but what they did was utterly sickening and vile. They essentially got let off. Lucy Connolly was sentenced to 31 months in prison for a tweet or whatever it was, a post on Facebook. These kids who have laughed while filming, raping tiny girls, nothing.
I wasn't aware of that case, but that certainly sounds absolutely abhorrent. I think there's a real issue with how sexual assault generally is treated in society. We know that most rapes are not prosecuted, and we do have all these ridiculous standards about women being told, well, what were you wearing, were you drunk, all this sort of thing. And I think there's a real issue with what we're feeding young children in school. They are getting access to pornography. We really need to be clamping down on all of that sort of thing. And safeguarding, and this does come back to what we're talking about, this is about safeguarding. Assaults need to be stopped before they happen, because it's no good. And so many people say this. I have come across politicians who will say this when we're talking about women-only spaces. They go, oh, well, if somebody does something wrong, they can be prosecuted. But that's not good enough. It's not good enough for the woman who's been assaulted. We need to stop those things happening before they occur, because otherwise you've got traumatized women. There was the case this week with the trans-identified woman who thought she was a man, who was put in the men's ward at the hospital, the psychiatric hospital, the Maudsley, and she was raped within an hour. Now, that hospital failed in their duty of care to her, because it doesn't matter what she thought her identity was. It doesn't matter that she thought she was a man. They should have said that is not a safe place for that woman to be. So we need people to start taking safeguarding seriously again.
I totally agree. Their actions should have consequences. And like I keep saying, lanyards kill. Susan, thank you ever so much. Thank you, as ever, for your hard work. And I'm pretty sure as prosecutions do or do not roll in the wake of this, we'll catch up again and, do a little litmus test on how well things are going. OK. Right, here we go. Let's do some messages before we go to break. Why spend money on women's toilets and sports if they were intended for attention-seeking men? Would Phillipson be happy to leave her daughter in a toilet alone with a man in a frock? Asks Michael. The thing is, Michael, one with all these mad leftist women is they would. They're the worst ones for it. They're the sort of, they're the forefront of a lot of this nonsense. It beggars belief, it really does. Becca, bang on. With this guidance for single-sex spaces, the biggest threat to a woman is a woman. And Linda in Stalybridge says, a woman transitioning to a man but has no penis of yet, which toilet would that person use? I think generally, Linda, and I don't know, but I think a lot of women who identify as men or, they don't go into it for the same level as men do, frankly, and a lot of men do it for fetish reasons. I think those women still choose to use women's facilities by and large. Anyway, right, we're going to take a short break, but don't go anywhere. Back just after this.
The offer to be the voice of a sheep.
Yes, you can only dream, really.
Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser. How much of Rip does your husband in real life have about him?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's mad.
Say
He's doing.
Kirsty and Phil!
Can we talk about one other thing?
Well, let's take this. It's an interview.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. I hope you've got a nice brew or a nice cup of tea in your paws and you're ready to have some fun with calls and messages, because this is the part of the show I love the most, when I get to speak to some of you guys. First of all, though, let's do a cheeky little voice note from Russ.
Hi Alex, great show. Russell Manchester. To do with Angela Rayner, that's just a typical move by Labour. She's having a meeting in the kitchen to do with rigging the elections, and she had no idea what's going on. Well, typical. Mark my words, Labour are going to get worse. Yes, believe it, they're going to get worse. And they're going to do every dirty tactic in the book to keep power. And we need to hold them accountable. We need to keep on at the police, at the judicial system, to hold these people accountable for what they are going to do. You think it's bad now, it's going to get a hell of a lot worse under Labour.
Do you know, it's funny, maybe one of the reasons why Angela Rayner didn't know what was going on in her own kitchen is she was in her new house down in Hove. Oh, sorry, just have to have a joke with it, don't you? Talking about Angela Rayner, let's hear from a non-Rayner Angela, no doubt a very sensible patriot. This is a voice note from another Angela.
Hi Alex, it's Angie from Warrington. Just wanted to say Andy Burnham's a career politician, won't do any better than Keir Starmer. These immigration figures, net zero figures, nothing but a brain drain. Andy's stance on Europe and lack of grooming gang support, absolutely shocking. I hope they don't vote him in. End of. I really hope not.
Well, let's see what happens. It's going to be a very interesting competition up there. Unfortunately, we can't go into lots of analysis and detail about it, because we're now in the sort of live period where if I start talking about this or that, then I could be influencing the vote. So all the rules have suddenly sort of clicked into place now. But it is going to be quite a battle to behold, a battle royale in many respects. It's almost like a proxy war, isn't it? Between Starmer and Farage, or Labour and Reform up there. But let's see, who knows? Everything can change, that is true. I like this. Someone said lanyardism. Well said, Alex. Not familiar with the word, but definitely familiar with the practice of covering up depravity of all kinds, calling good evil and evil good. That's because I just invented the word lanyardism. You can call that part of the lexicon. It's a neologism. But, it's true, isn't it? All the woke stuff, it's their favourite piece of uniform, isn't it? The lanyard. Got to have a lanyard. Got to have an emoji in your bio, but mainly, the physical manifestation. So you can tell that someone's morally righteous is the presentation of the lanyard. I'm obsessed with them at the moment. Now, this is an interesting message. So, the person whose message has not left a name, and you'll see why. About 6 years ago, my wife and I wanted to adopt a couple of children as our kids were grown up and independent. At our first group meeting, we were all but laughed at. Being a white, self-funding couple with no need for any financial help is not helpful. Apparently, being of a minority, disabled, single, gay, or reliant on the state would help us to be successful. Apparently, we couldn't understand the children's difficulties as we were too privileged. We were devastated at the time and moved and chose a different path. That's heartbreaking. And at the very start of my sort of political career, if you will, it was back in 2012, and I began working with Nigel Farage and UKIP as it was back then. UKIP 1.0, not the current setup. And one of my first big jobs, so to speak, was the fact that there was a couple near Sheffield, I think it was, who fostered kids And they've been fostering kids for years. Their foster kids loved them, stayed in touch, would come back, Christmas Day, regarded them as parents, doing a wonderful, wonderful thing for disadvantaged, vulnerable young people who otherwise don't have any chance in life. Anyway, it turned out they were banned from fostering kids because it was, discovered that they voted for UKIP. For crying out loud. I just think it's absolutely appalling. The idea that a stable, heterosexual, financially comfortable family home that's brought up children already puts the bottom of the list because of those things is abhorrent. This is what I'm talking about. Blimmin' lanyards. Let's speak to our good friend Cindy in Michigan. I think America really was the sort of the origin, the genesis of the lanyard movement. Have things started turning a corner in America now under Trump, Cindy?
Oh, yeah. And you know what? I don't see any lanyards around where I live. None.
Nice. You live in a nice lanyard-free zone. I might be moving to Michigan.
Yeah, actually in Pigeon, come to Pigeon. You'd love it. It's all Trump land.
Oh, well, that's good. What are the rules currently in America for this? Because we've now sort of come up with, in theory, a set of guidelines saying men aren't allowed to use women's toilets. Woohoo! What's the case in America?
Oh, yeah, it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen. And if it did, we would be able to say something. And I think that the fact that they're trying to pass a potential stipulation to a law or a law that you can't mention that in the UK, I think it's just another way to silence women. And I think that we need to stop calling trans women because they're just men.
Yeah.
They're just men.
No, I know, I couldn't agree more, but I do feel like, we peaked with the madness when we saw that Khalifi girl, man, beating the living daylights out of a female boxer, the Italian boxer in the Olympics. And I do hope, actually, that most of the madness is now behind us, or at least people are alive to it and are prepared to stand up against it, finally. Cindy, thank you ever so much. Always a delight speaking to you, my darling. OK, right, now, before we go to break, let me remind you of the numbers. Let's do our housekeeping. 0344 499 1000 is the number to call if you want to be patched through to the studio. Kieran is there waiting to register your details and give you a call back. It's your normal network rate. You can use that same number to send me a message or leave me a voice note on WhatsApp. 87222 is the number to send a text message. Write the word talk before you text. Put the kettle on. I'm back after this.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, welcome back to the show. Delighted to have your company today. And if you want to join the conversation, we would love to hear from you, because that's what we're all about. Clues in the title, folks. We're called Talk for a reason, because that's what we do. That's what we like to do. And we'd like you to join us in that pursuit, because this show is nothing without you, my wonderful, opinionated, patriotic, sensible, discerning human beings. So if you want to join the conversation, the number is 03444991000. That is the number to call. That is your normal network rate. You can also send me a WhatsApp message on that number. 87222 is the number to text. If you see me smirking, it's because I can see through the gallery glass at Kieran lining up Kev on the TV screen, and he did a sort of Fonz-esque thing like this with his hair. Oh, it pleased me so much. Anyway, should we see if his hair's looking all right? He joins us now, my old mucker, Kevin O'Sullivan. How you doing?
No, I'm finished yet. Just getting it right. How you doing? All right?
I'm all right. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Where do we begin? Let's start off this. You know, this is fascinating. The Rayner story that we're being culturally enriched with exotic electoral practices, Kevin, it seems. Yeah. You know, we're learning things from our Pakistani brethren. Particularly, it would seem, in the Tameside borough, in the heart of Rayner's constituency of Ashton-under-Lyne, where 4 men and a woman have been arrested on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud. Now, this is all about electoral fraud. To cut a long story short, essentially sort of putting up candidates, bogus candidates, to split votes. Labour candidate Atta Ul Razul, the former vice chairman of the Ashton-under-Lyne Labour branch, was elected after beating second place candidate Ahmed Mahmoud by 177 votes. But 2 alleged fake candidates received 291 votes between them. And St Peter's Ward was the only one in Tameside to return a Labour councillor on May the 7th. But apparently, allegedly, this plot to stitch up the election, essentially, at least one discussion was said to have taken place in Angela Rayner's kitchen. According to the Labour Party, they say no evidence has been presented of any Labour Party involvement in these allegations. We categorically reject any suggestion the party was involved. I'll tell you what, if something went on in my kitchen, I'm pretty sure I'd know about it.
Yeah, I mean, are they going to deny it happened? Are they going to deny that anything was wrong here? I mean, all this sort of, we have no knowledge of this, we categorically don't know about this. That's not quite a full denial, is it? And we see this too many times all over the country, that too many people, usually on the left of the equation, seem to think democracy is something to be played with, something to be manipulated to their advantage. That you know, I mean, what about the postal voting problems that we've had, especially in Tower Hamlets in London? I mean, the leader of the council there is actually convicted for electoral fraud. He's the leader of the damn council. So we see it too many times. Now, Angela Rayner, Labour, denying any involvement, and we have to accept that. But this is a terrible, terrible look. Yet another terrible look for Angela Rayner. I mean, can we go through a week once where she gets some good publicity? Everything about this woman is always negative, always bad, always a terrible look. And she wants to be our next Prime Minister.
I wonder if there's a bit of skullduggery in this. Do you reckon there might be a bit of skullduggery that, you know, if anyone knew about what might have taken place in those elections, it would be Labour Party insiders? Do you think there's a case of, go on, get that one out, you know, to stymie her ambitions?
I see what you mean. Yeah, it's possible. It's possible. My favourite sort of conspiracy theory of the moment in terms of this skullduggery, you know, the machinations that go on behind the scenes in the wonderful world of Westminster, is that Keir Starmer is going to go to Makerfield to campaign for Andy Burnham. Now, what is that going to result in? I would say that may well result in Andy Burnham definitely losing, and Keir Starmer bloody well knows that. Hence, his arrival may not be greeted with utter ecstasy by Mr. Burnham. I mean, it's so ridiculous what's going on generally with this government now. By the way, can I just point out that they are this bunch of rats fighting in a sack, this internecine sordid row they're having right now. They are supposed to be governing the country.
What are you talking about, Kev? They're doing brilliant things. Have you not heard? They finally got something new to shout about that isn't breakfasts for kids in school. Because never mind that our economy is basically a burning dumpster fire falling off a cliff. Never mind that we got terrorists prowling the streets. Never mind we've got no such thing as border security. Never mind nobody can buy a house, that people are dying in hospital corridors. Don't worry about any of that. You got £1 off visiting the zoo this weekend.
Yeah, and by the way, all this, the free breakfast clubs, they're not free. We, the taxpayers, will pay for them. Yeah. And also, Angela's, or rather, Rachel Reeves's cheap trips to the zoo and to summer attractions. I mean, that's a figure you're going to get because it'll be so much cheaper. Who's going to pay for it? Us.
I know, but I'll tell you what's really sordid. If you
pay for it.
You want to know the Labour Party's, priorities? Whack a load of tax on independent schools, which mean that good quality education is completely rubbleised because a lot of the sort of middle income ones that actually provided social mobility, or in some cases actually provided services for the special educational needs kids. Oh no, they're having to close down because the Labour Party are taxing, going to a good school. But don't you worry, during half term you can go to a soft play area for 50 pence off. I mean, these people are so dim-witted. They're so ludicrously useless. And, if you want to see how ill-educated they are, 1 minute they're all running around sort of trying to outstrip each other in, how much closer to the EU they all want us to be. It's like, oh, I don't want to reverse Brexit, but do. Oh, we could rejoin the customs union, but no. But and then in the next breath, they're trying to celebrate the fact they've struck a trade deal with the UAE, which in many respects is a very good thing, but that wouldn't have happened without Brexit. These people are just hypocritical buffoons.
Yeah, Andy Burnham. When I said 2 months ago that I fervently want to rejoin the EU, I didn't mean that I fervently want to rejoin the EU. I, of course, don't want to rejoin the EU because nor do the people of Makerfield. These people are just idiots, who think we're all fools. Andy Burnham wants to rejoin the EU. They all do. And probably if he becomes Prime Minister, we almost certainly will. So,
we're going to, under this Labour government, we're going to basically do it by hook or crook some way anyway, which way. But, if they get replaced, it'll all be, burnt to the ground again. Actually, my favourite politician of them all, Monsieur Jordan Bardella over in France, has come out today, actually, that his economics advisor, is a great, great friend of mine, Jean-Henri Gallois, has turned around and said to the Telegraph, if the UK wanted to reapply to join the EU, we'd block it. We'd prevent them because we think that's anti-democratic. We're going to stand up for the British people. Honestly, I love those guys.
Exactly. By the way, if we rejoin the EU and Andy Burnham, the trouble with Andy Burnham, right? If we end up with Andy Burnham as Prime Minister, and by the way, I do think, especially with Starmer's visit to Makerfield, he's in big trouble in terms of potentially winning that election. It will be close.
Don't worry, they've got a plan in Raina's kitchen. It'll be fine.
But yeah. But if Burnham gets to Westminster and then defenestrates Starmer, we're just going to get Starmer Mark II. He's just another sort of, pretend centrist, very left-wing socialist Labour type, selling us a lie. Not particularly good at anything, hasn't got much of a track record, hasn't done much. Oh, cheaper bus fares in Manchester. Well
there he is, dressed like a washed-up former boy band member, if those people watching. He looks like the missing member of a Take That tribute act, apparently about to make some sort of speech there in Makerfield. But you're right, the thing is, what people don't want is leftism. That's why they don't want the Labour Party. It doesn't matter who leads it, they don't want leftism.
Yeah, get this through your head, Andy. You stand for everything that the people of Makerfield hate. They hate. And by the way, he's very keen on blokes being allowed to go into ladies' loos.
Oh, he loves all of it. He signed up to the whole doctrine of fanatical
Yeah,
leftism.
he's just another Labour woke warrior. He went to Manchester, but he's just a Westminster product from the Labour elite. And all he's ever done is politics. He's never had another job in his life. So Andy Burnham, big deal. He won't make a blind bit of difference, but I have a suspicion that Robert Kenyon, a genuine working class guy, a plumber with a white van, I have a suspicion that Robert Kenyon, the Reform UK candidate, might give Andy a bloody nose.
It's going to be a bit of an epic battle. I'm just giving Ted a quizzical look through the gallery glass because I don't know whether you've triggered the reading of the list. Whenever in election time, there's no. Ted's like, no, you don't have to. We're not ready for the reading of the list. I always look forward to that moment when you're, covering a by-election. It gets to a certain week, and all of a sudden you mention the name of one candidate, and you've got to read out all of them. And everyone looks forward to the moment that it's the monster raving lunar party candidate.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Everyone loves that one. Let's talk about. Another Andy. Now, an Andy who also faces a bit of an uphill struggle, some might say. Andrew Mountbatten-Windsor. My understanding now, when the police nicked him on his birthday, that actually the thrust of their inquiries was actually about sexual offences, and one of the alleged Epstein victims has come forward essentially saying that she was my understanding is trafficked into the country for his purposes. Talk to me more about this, because you're far better at watching the royal family and seeing what's going on and all this stuff than I am.
Alex, I'm far better at so much than you, but let's talk about Prince Andrew. Seriously, I'm not much better than you about anything.
But when it comes to the royals, you win hands down.
The royals, I'm probably better at.
Yeah.
No, so the story is, of course, when he was arrested on his 66th birthday, it was for alleged misconduct in a public office when he was trade envoy for this country. That investigation has widened and is now encompassing serious allegations of potential alleged sex offences. And this was triggered by the story that, I think it was in 2010, an alleged trafficked woman, trafficked probably by Jeffrey Epstein, was flown to London and taken to Andrew's then home, the Royal Lodge in Windsor Great Park, for sex. And that now is becoming a very serious issue for the police. The police say that is now a significant investigation, and they are talking to that woman's lawyers, and they have also put out an appeal for other potential sexual victims of Prince Andrew. And they are making it very clear that this is significant. Now, and they are already talking to the Crown Prosecution Service in terms of the veracity of these allegations and how they may be used to progress to court. Let me tell you, Alex, this is it. Prince Andrew, the former Prince Andrew, is in serious trouble. If this stuff is
Do you think he'll end up inside?
Well, if this stuff is proved, I hope he likes prison food.
When's the last time a royal was put in prison? Was that in the Tower of London?
It must be. I think the last time a royal was incarcerated would be the Tower of London. So, I'll
tell you what, it boosts tourism numbers to London if you could go and actually see a live prisoner in the Tower again.
We know enough about Prince Andrew. These are allegations, of course, and they need to be properly investigated and proved in a court. But we already know enough about this pompous, foolish oath to say that if he goes to jail in the end, he bloody well deserves it. He absolutely deserves it. But by the way, also, do not underestimate what a serious crisis this is for the royal family.
Oh, indeed.
Her Majesty the Queen that got him this job as a trade envoy. She didn't make many mistakes, but that was an egregious mistake. And the royal family is on the rack here in serious, serious trouble because of that oath. Meanwhile, his nephew, Harry, isn't doing them any favours either.
Oh, what's he been up to?
Well, just his general behaviour since
He just exists.
since he ran away to California.
Oh, right. So I thought, I was going to say, I thought he'd done something new. I thought there was the latest sort of, offensive thing that Prince Harry's done. We're just talking about the whole, catalogue of.
I can't recall it at the moment. His wife, Meghan, has been behaving terribly. I mean, she did this massive photo dump on Instagram of their wedding day. Their fantastic Windsor wedding in 2018 to mark their 8th wedding anniversary, which was a couple of days ago. And all of these pictures of the wedding, not a single member of the royal family are in them. She's sort of censored the royal family. There's one slight picture of the back of the king's head. No one else is in them.
What I find hilarious is every time Meghan does something with Harry, it's basically Meghan takes up 95% of the screen and Harry's like, a bit part in the background, which is pretty much their marriage as far as I can tell.
Absolutely.
Now, earlier on I was talking in the first hour about sort of moral inversion, lanyardism, the fact that lanyardism is the most dangerous thing in society. The whole idea that goodness is sort of, a man who wants a child to chop off his genitals, who wants to get into women's spaces, who loves a bit of Gaza. That's good. That's beatified. That's the best possible thing you can be. And the worst thing you can be is, I don't know, a law-abiding Christian. Terrible. But talking about lanyardism, the whole sort of the uppity wokery of channels, particularly Channel 4, right? So I'd think about Channel 4 News especially, but Channel 4 is, for a long time, it has gobbled up every last little bit of woke that it possibly could. And in doing so, joined other channels in making content that, frankly, I've found revolting from the beginning, that I just wouldn't watch, quite frankly. I've got better things to do with my life, but also B, eventually they're going to hit a wall. They're going to become a crisis. And here you have a second Channel 4 dating show hit by abuse claims. Now, the first one, Married at First Sight, I think is just a repugnant concept. I think it makes a mockery of the institution of marriage. I think it is dangerous. I think it is corrosive culturally. I think it's just a vile concept. And it doesn't remotely surprise me that now 2 women have alleged they've been raped by their on-screen husbands. I mean, it just, this is what happens when you throw thousands of years of morality in the bin. I would say First Dates, which I have watched, doesn't, I always thought that was, by and large, quite cute. But there's something that's gone on. There's so many, frankly, sick, egregiously permissive and perverse programmes, particularly being made for channels such as Channel 4. I remember there being one with, it's gross. There's this couple who...
I'll tell you one right now.
Yeah.
Okay, so Channel 4 are on their high horse. So we provide protection, psychological help for all the participants in reality TV shows. By the way, all you need to know about the Married at First Sight allegations is that one of the alleged rapists allegedly told his victim, she said this, that when she said no, he said, "You have to give me sex, you just married me." So that is the format at work, isn't it?
Exactly.
Now, while Channel 4 says, no, we provide psychological help, blah, 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 they have just finished the second series of Virgin Island.
I've never watched it. It sounds horrific. I saw the trailers for it.
They take 10 virgins to an island, 6 episodes. They have episodes like Sex Toy Week, Nude Week, Fondling Week, and then in the 6th episode, they film them having sex. Isn't that uplifting?
That is so degenerate. That is so vile.
Thank you very much, Channel 4. By the way, Channel 4 is in part a publicly funded broadcast.
I know.
We take the money away from them.
I'm waiting for somebody who's been on Naked Attraction, which is one of the most horrible things that's ever been created. I mean, what the hell? It is a reflection on how gross society is today that programme is in its gazillionth series. Do you know what I mean? But I'm waiting for somebody, who sort of appeared on national television in one of those booths, displaying their heavily tattooed body and bolts through their, undercarriage, turning around going, that now everyone at work saw that. Oh, no, now everyone knows what I look like naked. I was vulnerable. You took advantage of me. I didn't. Do you know what I mean? It's just.
Look.
That's just gross. Why are you making it?
This is what you need to know about reality TV. It basically is a genre that started in the very late 90s. It came to this country at the turn of the century, the year 2000. There was a show called Castaways, and then swiftly after that, Big Brother, and the rest is history. Since then, around the world, the reality TV format, taking innocent members of the public, putting them into pressurized emotional situations, hopefully, so that they can have fights, so they can weep, they can break down and make good TV. Since the year 2000, around the world, there have been 40 suicides by people who took part in reality TV shows. Love Island, a couple of years, 2 contestants from that, British contestants, took their own lives. So reality TV, what we have to decide as a society is this. Are we happy to present this gladiatorial form of entertainment where we essentially say it's well worth, it's justifiable to sacrifice the well-being and the welfare of individuals for the entertainment of the masses? So if the vast majority are entertained by these people's distraught breakdowns and their suicides, then that's okay, because so many people enjoyed it. Just like in Roman times, it's okay that gladiator is going to get killed because the crowd is enjoying it. We have to make a decision. Are we happy for the television industry to do this, or are we not? Make a decision. Don't let them carry on getting away with it.
No, I agree.
We are going to give them permission.
Most people, are drawn to watching disturbing things. It's kind of part of our sort of slightly grim human nature. I just think there needs to be a taste test when it comes to making content. And now you've described what actually happens on that Virgin Island. I think that definitely doesn't pass any sort of taste test, frankly. It sounds abhorrent. And at the end of the day, if you are one of the major television channels that gets public funding, you are a custodian of this country's culture. You have a moral responsibility to set certain boundaries. And the problem is they think they're doing that. Again, lanyardism. They think they're doing that by being progressive. No, you're not being progressive. You're being morally bankrupt, you sickos.
They call it social. They always call these social experiments. They're not really. They are just mechanisms to provide tawdry entertainment. But I've worked for, as you know, Alex, I've worked for the Red Tops half my checkered career. And I'm used to pompous people on television saying that we're the scum of the earth and we are sensationalist and awful. Well, newspapers, yes, they've had their low points, and yes, of course, they're not always saints. But the cesspit of reality television, the cesspit of what our television industry has been doing for 20 years, deserves a lot more publicity. And I think that the reality genre is in big, big trouble. And it deserves to be, because producers have just abused it. They've abused it.
No, I think, we should be dragging people who commissions these programmes and just calling them perverts. Kev, thank you ever so much.
And on that bombshell.
Crosstalk. Oh, I miss you, Kev. Lovely catching up as always. Right, okay, we're going to take a short break. After the break, it's my expert topic, you'll be pleased to know. We're going to be discussing the selection-y thingamajiggery squadness thing going on with the England World Cup team. I know Ted said try and it's going to be an interesting ride, but thankfully I'm joined by a brilliant sports writer, Jim White from the Telegraph, so he'll guide us through everything taking place as England's World Cup squad is announced. That's after this.
so down! When you get the offer to be the voice of a sheep...
Yes, you can only dream, really.
Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser! Well, how much of rip does your husband in real life have about him?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's mad.
Say Carl.
He's dude.
Kirsty and Phil!
Can we talk about one other thing?
We can talk about loads of things. It's an interview.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning.
I've got some breaking news here. The Crowborough Army Training Camp could hold male asylum seekers all the way until 2030.
Good.
After the Home Office claimed it would only be for 12 months. Not much ambition involved in that, is there, in terms of solving the migrant crisis?
Absolutely, and the way that the Labour government gaslit the public when the migrants were first moved in there, saying, you know, you guys are absolutely...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. It is time to talk about football, my expert topic. Everyone knows that's not true, but thankfully it is an expert topic for Jim White, who's sports writer at The Telegraph. Jim, thank you so much for holding my hand through all of this, because Ted said to me, oh, you know, who do you think should be captain of the England team? My producer, Ted, and I thought, I literally couldn't name anybody. I'm terrible. I'm brought up in Gloucester, you know, we like egg-shaped balls. So tell me, what are the top lines from the England squad announcement?
I think it's who's not there, Alex. I think we knew who certain players were going to be. The captain, by the way, is Harry Kane, probably the best player England have had in a generation. So obviously he's going to be there. But it's who's not there, I think, that's really indicative of where we are internationally and where we stand. So I'm going to give you three names, Alex, and I want you to remember them and repeat them to me at the end of this interview.
Okay.
So who is not there? Trent Alexander-Arnold, Cole Palmer and Phil Foden. Now, the interesting thing about those three, they are incredibly talented, audacious players who really add a kind of creative verve to any team that they play for. The fact that none of them have been selected, I think, is really a pointer to the kind of direction that Thomas Tuchel, the England manager, wants his team to go to. He wants them to be much more kind of in his mould. He wants to tell them what to do rather than have guys who may or may not alter the perspective of a game through their own abilities.
So basically, if I'm going to sort of apply some logic to this, it is about building a team, a cohesive group of players who are going to work together, that he's going to be able to give instructions to and who will listen, rather than the, you know, bright young thing who, you know, has his own agenda and backs himself a little bit too much, perhaps.
That's exactly right. And that's exactly what he has actually said in his press conference. I want players who can be cohesive, who can go to plan and so on. And I think there's a perfectly legitimate thing there. But the thing is, in international competition, there will come a time when England are maybe a goal down, not long to go. And what you want is one of these creative, inspiring lads to come on and do something completely unexpected. And what he's done by not choosing them is he's not got that option anymore.
Right, so he's not even sort of putting them, not even benching them, so to speak, for those sort of black swan moments.
Exactly. That's exactly where I think he's made a mistake.
Is it because he's German?
Is it because he's German? He's a very good manager. And listen, he knows a lot more than I do about the characters that he's dealing with. But I think he is slightly bit self-destructive in not giving himself that option. is what I'd say.
What do you think our chances are in this World Cup? Because that's what, you know, some sort of oaf like me cares about, because I don't watch football. I know nothing about football. Normally, if I'm honest, I find it mildly tedious. But when it comes to a World Cup, if we progress to a certain stage, all of a sudden I'm like the world's biggest fan. And not an expert, but I'm there, you know, cheering them on down the pub, screeching over a pint of cider. Am I likely to be doing that this year?
Well, for a start, you won't be doing it for a very long time, because this is the longest World Cup there's ever been. 6 weeks it's going on for. The first 4 weeks will be almost just basically getting rid of the also-rans, systems and processes to ensure that the big teams get to the end. You won't really get excited. England will qualify from the various groups they have to go through, but you won't really get excited until the latter stages, when they're up against Spain, when they're up against France, when they're up against Argentina. And those are the moments, I will go back to it, those are the moments where you could do with a maverick on your bench.
A maverick like Phil Foden, Cole Palmer or Trent Alexander-Arnold by any chance?
Alex, 10 out of 10, mate. 10 out of 10.
Yeah, well, I circled the names on my sheet. I'd like to pretend I'm a sudden convert and an expert, but we have time. I'm sure you will guide me through when the World Cup is in full motion, and I need your moral support once again. Jim, thank you ever so much. It's been fantastic having you on the programme today. Now, if football is up your strata, in the language of Thomas Tuchel, then you want to listen to this particular competition that we are offering you to take part in. Because the FIFA World Cup is almost here, and thanks to Adidas, I don't know what you're supposed to say, the tournament's official match ball supplier, our friends at TalkSport just there are giving you the chance to actually be there. Adidas is sending you and a friend to Dallas, that sounds cool, to see England versus Croatia live on June the 17th. You can be at England's first game at the FIFA World Cup at what is one of the world's best stadiums. Also, you get to go to Dallas and maybe watch a rodeo. I don't know, that's what I'd love to see. Right, are you ready to get that winning feeling? Because here is how to enter.
Get ready for that winning feeling. For your chance to win, head to talksportwin.com or text TALK to 83338. Texts and online entries cost £2.50 plus your standard network rate. Or call 0343 418 7260. Lines close 1st of June 2026 at 4 p.m. That's when you'll need to answer your phone if it rings. 18 plus UK residents only. This is a network promotion. See full terms and conditions at talksport.com/win. So for your chance to win, text TALK to 83338 now. Full T's and C's at win.talk.tv.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, you will have noticed to be a member of left-wingery. There's a drop-down menu of certain opinions that you have to have. If you don't have them, then you're booted out as a far-right fascist. Now, from the drop-down menu, of course, is remaining in the EU, pronouns, open-door borders, hating Elon Musk and X, of course, that is one of the worst things happened to the world. But also, you have to hate Palantir and everything Palantir stands for. In fact, you've got to regard Palantir as the spawn of the devil himself, because the man who set up that company is called Peter Thiel, and he happens to be one of the few people in Silicon Valley who is an out-of-the-closet right-winger. So, of course, despite them doing excellent things with their brilliant technology, particularly when it comes to the NHS, which has actually helped plenty of people, hundreds of thousands in fact, from actually getting early diagnoses, getting off waiting lists, ever since it plugged in and tidied up the madness which used to be run by fax machines and cobweb-covered lever arch folders in the cellar of your GP surgery. No, it is evil. And the latest leftist to decide that Palantir is nothing but bad because the owner is right-wing is, of course, he never misses a beat, Chief of the Lanyards, Sir Sadiq Khan. He's blocked a £50 million deal that would have actually allowed the Met Police to use AI to support criminal investigations. Surely that'd be a good thing, rather than have police detectives having to sit in front of pools of footage hour after hour after hour trying to find the moment that, you know, the kid in the hoodie stabs someone else while they're having to work on 32 cases simultaneously. This technology might have actually resulted in people finally being prosecuted for offences. But no, it's Palantir, and that is evil, remember. What is it with this obsession on the left with Palantir? Well, let's speak to the brilliant Andrew Orlovsky. He's a tech journalist, a columnist for The Telegraph, and has just written all about it in that very publication. Tell me more, Andrew.
Hi, Alex. Thanks so much. It's a fascinating subject. You're right that Palantir is now the subject of conspiracy theories, absolutely kind of deranged commentary from Piers Corbyn and Sadiq Khan. Now, specifically, this deal is a 25 million one-year deal with another 24, I think, in the year after. Sadiq says it's for process, but it's clearly a political decision because he's not allowed to interfere on what he calls values judgments. That doesn't mean Palantir is necessarily a great deal, and I think we need to examine whether we are getting good value for money. I did a big deep dive into exactly what it's doing in the health service and the police, and I saw some really good stuff. I didn't necessarily see things that were unique to Palantir. I saw things that our British techies can build quite easily and cheaply, and then we're not locked into an American company. So there's really good arguments. It's irrational to say, I mean, there's some very good stuff. For example, the cancer application the NHS is using, that's built on Palantir for NHS England. Do we keep this in 2 years' time, or does it just go? These are really good questions. Government hasn't been a great story with IT. It gets locked into contracts, and we should make sure we're not locked into this one either.
The madness surrounding it, it always seems to be this way. You know, Elon Musk sending rockets into space, Neuralink helping people with horrible, life-destroying conditions like ALS, enabling them to sort of live a more normal life. No, we can't celebrate that because Elon Musk backed Donald Trump. And I feel it's exactly the same thing going on here. I mean, I get the impression if all of a sudden Russia cut undersea cables and we were plunged into internet darkness and Elon Musk offered the nation Starlink free of charge, Sadiq Khan would refuse it out of sheer spite.
Yeah, I wonder if the only thing that can keep Sadiq happy is if every company changes its name to Paddington Bear. It's really dumb. I mean, Alex isn't really a right winger. He's been a right wing person for about 10 minutes. He was a big donor to Biden and Kamala. But he's leaned in very recently into the culture wars, and I mean, we have to be careful we're not being played here. To its credit, Palantir hasn't done business in Russia or China, unlike almost every other tech company, and it hasn't operated wage-crushing monopolies like almost every other Silicon Valley company has too. But as ever, I just think we should think in our national interest. We should learn from what Palantir is doing well, and we should be able to do it ourselves at the end of the day.
Well, of course, we can't do that because that AI data centre, Stargate, that we were supposed to be building that was going to potentially add billions onto our GDP on a rolling annual basis, ain't allowed to happen because of various sort of, ridiculous stuff, planning permissions, energy bills and EU copyright laws. But there you are. Never mind.
I think we're all glad the EU. Well, it's our copyright law, actually, Alex, and the idea they need to steal British creators' work so they can cure cancer is totally absurd. Let's stick up for Britain when it comes to these AI decisions. I'll give you an example. Whitehall developed very cheaply something called Redbox. On December the 31st, it was scrapped in favour of another giant American technology company. So let's put Britain first when we make these IT decisions.
I couldn't agree more. I think that's wonderful. We are, some of our world-leading universities. We should be at the forefront of all of this stuff. By the way, let's have a little clip, shall we, of Palantir UK CEO Lewis Mosley talking about Sadiq Khan on our sister station Times Radio earlier today.
Well, I think the mayor is putting politics over public safety. He talks about values, but I think what Londoners value is not being mugged, not being raped by a serving police officer, and that's really what the focus here should be.
I suppose on the counter to that, this is democracy in action. He's been elected by millions of people. He doesn't have to do business with you. You don't have an inherent right to be a part of the Met Police's software procurement and the technology that they use.
But this comes back to then the rule of law. That is not in the rules. And if we're going to politicise procurement in that way, then we are going to compromise public safety.
He's getting a bit of a reputation, is Lewis, for sort of going through interviews like a knife through soft butter. Well-spoken him. I've got an interesting fact for you, Andrew, that I stumbled across online earlier today. One assumes it's a fact and not a fiction, but you never know. It was a chart showing, by religion, concern about the future of AI. And quite startlingly, there's a direct correlation between the more religious and more Christian you are, the more likely you are to love AI and to embrace it and see this as having great potential for humanity.
That's not my experience at all, because AI is something of a religion, but it's a religion that hates human beings. The people who advance AI are pretty strange. You see them. I mean, copyright's a great example. Copyright preserves the dignity of human beings and their creativity, and it's like, oh, we must get rid of this thing. I actually find the best arguments, the best people who have a grip on AI are belong to a religion, or at least respect them. They're atheists who respect the religion. Because, I mean, this is something that seeks to replace human beings. It has no value on communities or nations. It's really kind of, the people advancing this are making very unpleasant a case for something that doesn't work most of the time.
Ooh, interesting. I mean, it's funny. I sort of look at AI as a double-edged sword. Part of me thinks this is going to be really good, especially when it comes to sort of medical diagnoses and things like that. And the other half of me is, quite frankly, for reasons you've just stated, sort of terrified about when humans start playing God. Andrew, keep us updated with all of this. You've written a fascinating piece in The Telegraph. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Good luck. Cheers, thanks.
All right, we are going to be taking a short break now. Your thoughts, by the way, on Palantir. Are you caught up in all the conspiracies? Do you just think, let them come on and do this stuff? As Andrew's saying, should we be looking to back British? Does AI freak you out? How much do you like wearing a lanyard? 03444 99 1000 is the number to call. It's your normal network rate. You can send me a WhatsApp on that number as well, or leave me a voice note on that number. 87222 is the number to send a text message. Write the word talk before you text. We are going to be back after this talking about rather concerning numbers, about how younger and younger people are suffering from poor health earlier than in previous generations. In fact, apparently life expectancy is potentially falling. We're going to be getting the stats and the analysis from former ONS statistician who really made his mark during COVID, standing up as a truth teller. The brilliant JB Jenkins is coming up after this.
being mad.
Chris O'Dowd! When you get the offer to be the voice of a sheep...
Yes, you can only dream, really.
Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser! How much of rip does your husband in real life have about him?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's a man.
So
He's a dude.
Kirsty and Phil!
Can we talk about one other thing?
We can talk about loads of things. It's an interview.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning.
I've got some breaking news here. The Crowborough Army Training Camp could hold male asylum seekers all the way until 2030 after the Home Office claimed it would only be for 12 months. Not much ambition involved in that, is there, in terms of solving the migrant crisis?
Absolutely, and the way that the Labour government gaslit the public when the migrants were first moved in there, saying, you know, you guys are absolutely being mad.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back. Now, it probably hasn't skipped your attention that seemingly younger and younger people are getting diagnosed with health conditions that once upon a time were more associated with older generations. Particularly things, it seems to my eyes, things such as cancer, but more largely categorised potentially as manifestations of issues when it comes to obesity and mental health. What's going on and what do the statistics show? Let's speak to Jamie Jenkins, former ONS statistician, hero of COVID, because Jamie, you sort of constantly kept us informed what was going on and actually spoke reason in a period of chaos. But what is behind this? Well, first of all, what are the statistics showing?
Yeah, good morning, Alex. So I think what they've tried to do here is they've looked at different cohorts of the population and tracked the kind of the health outcomes for those cohorts, and then compared, say, people who were born in the 40s, 50s and 60s and people who were born a bit later on to try and ascertain at the same period in life how was people's health. And what they're finding is that people who are born much later are in worse health when you look at some of the outcomes or some of the diagnosis and some of the metrics when they start measuring weight and things. They're worse than what they were in previous generations. And I think a couple of points to probably bring out on this is that, so obviously when I was growing up in the 1980s and the early 1990s as well, you know, it was quite common. We didn't have computers, did we? We didn't have all these Xboxes and things. It was quite common to go out and play on the streets, go and play football on the streets. We would do a lot of activity, and obviously that's good for your mental health, doing exercise. So when we were going into finishing school, and we weren't looking at the internet all the time, we were far more active then than what you would look at, say, the children of today are doing. So it's no surprise when you think we've got more people who are obese, people who've got mental health issues, there's probably less socialising going on among children outside of the school scenario. So that's what the data is showing, and so I'm not surprised, really.
Yeah, I mean, to me, there have been sort of two things that have happened in the modern era that have potentially led to this. And I don't have any sort of, you know, empirical evidence to back up my assumptions. But the two things I think that have probably contributed to this huge downward spiral in both physical and mental health, taking the latter one, it's social media. You can clearly see that as soon as social media starts coming to prominence, people start going weird because they, you know, live in a sort of make-believe virtual world rather than having human-to-human contact, which is what we're built to enjoy and thrive on. But the other one, I don't think it ever gets enough attention, but more and more people out there, you know, going online, following influencers are picking up on this, which is the emergence of big food, or the emulsifiers they put into products. The fact that the big food industry for ages said to us, didn't they, in the sort of 80s and 90s, oh, well, you know, you better eat loads of carbohydrates for heart health. If you're not filling your guts with shredded wheats, then you're all going to, be terribly poorly. And yet, increasingly now, people look at that medical advice. Well, it wasn't medical advice. It's sort of, a line coming from Big Food, and then sort of, which ended up imparted in various medical journals through skullduggery, and are saying, well, that's actually totally wrong. We should be following more of a Mediterranean diet. Same with the big push for low-fat products, which when you read the labels, instead of nice full-fat yogurt, which is, oh, look, just yogurt, you read the label of something that's low fat, and it's riddled with weird space food made in a vat in some sort of factory somewhere, and you wonder why all of a sudden there's an obesity crisis when people are having all this added sugar, salt, emulsifiers, stabilizers, palm oil, seed oils, the whole lot of it.
No, and I think you're right. I was talking to a friend about the findings of this study as well, and another thing is home cooking. That's pretty much been eradicated over the last 10 or 20 years as well. Parents haven't got as much time on their hands, or children are seeing, oh, I just want some fast food. And you're right, with all the ingredients, a lot of this has been imported from the USA, which is obviously has had a much bigger obesity crisis than what we've had, and that's going to be imported. And I suppose the big question is, what does this mean? And if you've got people who are unhealthier at the younger ages, I think you talked just before the break, are we going to die earlier? Well, we may not die earlier, but what it does is it puts an even bigger burden onto the NHS, because people will have a earlier kind of go into the NHS than what they would have in previous generations. So the cost to fixing this is a bit of an issue. The benefit system, we know we had the borrowing figures out this morning, and they're quite shocking. They're actually up this year versus April of last year. Things are getting worse. We are getting more taxes in by the Chancellor, but we're spending more and more money out there. They came in with this promise of tackling the benefits bill. And we've got, if you think, what was the benefit there for, when we were growing up? The benefit was a safety net, but for some people it's a lifestyle. So you get some people thinking now, well, I don't think this generation, Alex, we don't teach resilience in school as much. I coach football teams and things, and what you tend to find is that they've changed now that, you can't have competitive football now until a little bit older. You can't say they're losers. Everybody's taking part. It's all about fun. Ultimately, life has winners, it has losers, and we need to be teaching that to our children, because that's part of that problem with the mental health crisis that we have. That they come out of school thinking, everybody should get everything equal, and when you don't get that job or you can't get something in life, they go, I've got a mental health problem. That's what they come out and say.
I mean, the way I look at this, Jamie, is it's quite simple. I'm a human. You're a human. We've both got human software and human hardware, which has been refined through evolution over millions of years to enable us to digest certain foods and work with one another in the real world. And I just feel like the more we move away from normal human practices, i.e. look at little screens instead of meeting up face to face, or eat weird space gunk because someone's told you that vegan sludge is good for the environment, morally good and good for your body, the more we do those things, the more it seems we're not adapted to them and they harm us.
No, you're right there. If you go back before the advent of the mobile phone and before that, and the computer, people generally would be out. They talk about nature as a good healer, where you'd be out at the coast, you'd be out in the countryside. A lot of people will probably go walking in the countryside, but they're on their phone, and so they're not actually taking in the scenery. There's a lot of studies that show meditation and just switching the brain off, giving it a time to relax is a good outcome for you from your own personal health. And I'm probably guilty of that as well, where I'm obviously looking at my phone, seeing what's going on. We all are in society, and just taking that bit of a reset moment can have that health beneficial for you going forward. And this will be an interesting one just to see how this one plays out, because if you think of everybody in society and you looked at their own, like how much they're putting in tax and how much they're taking out, if we've got this younger cohort now who aren't as healthy as say previous ones, the burden on the NHS is going to be significant. And I think younger people is where prevention should be looked at in terms of the health service, because basically the health service has become a repair shop for a broken society, and we need better prevention in the health system. And I think you're right to call out the food there. Preparing meals, going back to basic ingredients, not buying all of this stuff that's on the shelf to keep it the longevity of its shelf life, which has got ingredients in there you probably wouldn't put in if you was cooking it yourself. back to basics on that is definitely a way forward for
Well,
people.
that's the thing. Big food as an industry, it's one of the most, in my mind, one of the most corrupt industries out there, actually in some respects worse than tobacco. But they're very good, aren't they, at proliferating the idea that the good, healthy, morally right diet to follow is always something you can't do yourself at home. Like low fat, for example. You know, fat is fat, butter's butter, milk is milk. No, you've got to have low fat. Well, that means you're going to have to, instead of going to your local, you know, dairy farm to get a pint of milk on the doorstep, you're going to have to go buy mayonnaise or whatever, or yogurt from a supermarket created by, you know, insert name here, because, you know, that then means it's low fat. It's the same with the push on veganism. I smelt a rat a long time ago and thought, no wonder they're pumping everyone with this idea of veganuary, because, you know, most people can't make anything that tastes remotely edible when they're vegan, so they'd have to go and get a chicken katsu curry made with fermented mushrooms, fungus and all sorts of weird gubbins.
No, yeah, I think you're spot on there, and I think that's ultimately where the health of the nation is going to have to be improved on this. Is we need to get people outdoors more. That's a critical part of it. I coach youngsters at sport, and part of my role there is to try and nurture young adults, but just get them physical, get them active. It's good for their mental health. People being locked up indoors, eating crap that the parents have bought for them and it's in the fridge and they're stuck in the microwave, eating all that rubbish and then sitting on their bedrooms on their phones.
It's not what we're supposed to do. This is it. This is what I'm going to say. My last bit of advice. By the way, thank you so much, Jamie Jenkins. Always a legend. My last bit of advice before we go to the top of the hour break is just remember, you are a human. Eat the things humans eat. Do the things humans do. It's a really good recipe for success. I'll see you just after this.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. You know, I've got a nasty little producer sometimes, evil little blighter he is. He puts my messages on the screen to read out, and he's put a message that says, Riot has been cancelled from Mike in Gloucester, and he looked at me through the mirror in a sort of taunting way, Riot's being the Fairford Air Show. Hadn't had a chance to look that up, but I've been going every year since I was tiny. I've probably since I was born. and I don't like there not being a Fairford. That is, of course, the US Air Base, so maybe it indicates that Donald Trump is going to get busy with his B-52s and B-1s again. So, you know, if that's the case, at least I still get my own little micro Fairford from my back garden. Anyway, there you go. The Ted was being vindictive and spiteful there, as per usual. He's not even listening, otherwise he'd have grimaced at me through the glass again. Right, let us get on with getting on. Let's talk about Rachel Reeves, because she's unveiled bold, brilliant plans to save the nation. You know, she's the greatest chancellor we've ever had. There's not a crisis that Rachel from accounts doesn't know how to deal with. So there we go. You know, things like gilt yields are off the charts, cost of living crisis off the charts, no one can get a job, no one can buy a house. We were talking about controlling prices of food in a supermarket a while ago because apparently things are so dreadful that we have to go full communist. And in the midst of all of this, you know, border crisis, crisis in defence, let's not be spending any extra money there. Although apparently they've added a bit more to defence, not enough. Yeah, rather than do all these, you know, massive big ticket items that we desperately need to address. No, don't you worry. She's going to make sure that you can have 50 pence off a McDonald's and £4 off a ticket to Alton Towers. Because she's going to cut VAT from 20% to 5% on visitor attractions and children's meals. Let's speak now to former Deputy Speaker of the House of Commons, former Conservative MP, a brilliant man he is too, the wonderful, delectable, erudite Nigel Evans. Great to have you back on the show. I mean, great. You know, the world's on fire, but you can have a quid off going to the zoo this summer.
It's absolutely bonkers because, as you know as well, Alex, today we've seen the borrowing figures for last month, and the government have borrowed 23 billion, of which 10.3 billion will be to service the debt. Now, you couldn't make these sorts of figures up. Now, Rachel from accounts tells us that she has been able to magic this £350 million in order to give the average family 10 quid off this summer on taking their kids somewhere from some loophole that they're fixing, which is raising perhaps 1.8 billion. Well, I've got a good idea. If you are literally borrowing 23 billion last month, then you haven't got any money to be spending on anything. Never mind on zoos and cinemas for kids and free bus rides if you're lucky enough to have buses in your area. It is absolutely ludicrous. We're in a situation where we talk about broken Britain, but we are broken in as much as the bank is broken. There's no money there whatsoever. So what's she doing? Doling out odd bits of money here and there on summer attractions. I call it the great summer savings stunt, because that's all it is. Summer savings stunt. It is pathetic. The madness of all of this. I mean, there's two things which strike me as being especially balmy. The first one is they're like, yeah, you know, we're going to help people go out and about and enjoy the sights of the UK this summer at the same time as bringing in tourist taxes. Make that make sense. But then if you really wanted the price of bus fares to come down to make it more affordable for people, or roller coasters at Drayton Manor Park, or, you know, penguins kept in chilled conditions down at, you know, London Zoo, cut their energy bills. That's the root of it all, surely. Yeah, no, absolutely. Well, we were promised, weren't we, that they were going to grow the economy, and every policy that Rachel from accounts has introduced over the past 2 years has been to hamper the entrepreneurs. They've chased away over 16,000 rich people from the United Kingdom who are now living in Dubai, Milan, and you name it, anywhere but Britain. All those taxes that they were paying, all the money that they were spending in the United Kingdom, gone. That's 16,000 millionaires. And then at the same time, those entrepreneurs that have remained are being absolutely caned. We're employers' national insurance. If you remember during the election, Alex, we will not increase national insurance. And then all of a sudden they discovered the word employers. Well, employer for me is not a dirty word. If it weren't for the employers employing people, then we'd be even more broken than we currently are. We should be absolutely heralding these wonderful people who create the jobs, who actually get up early in the morning, work all the hours that God gives, and we should be basically patting them on the back and saying, what can we do to encourage you to further invest your money to create further jobs. You've just seen this week that the number of people unemployed has gone up yet again. A lot of them will be young people as well, Alex. I mean, we want to give them hope. And instead, what we're giving them is 10 quid off a visit to Regent's Park Zoo.
That's because they ain't got any jobs to go to, and all of their independent schools have been closed down with the 20% VAT added to those as well. So they've got to go do something, so they better go down a soft play area and take their frustrations out on some sort of beanbag. Do you remember at the beginning of like the Labour Party term, there was that whole farcical debate over what a working person was? I just had one of those sort of PTSD flashbacks to that then. They're mad, these people.
Don't worry, they can't define what a working person is because they can't define what a woman is. So, you know, it's as simple as that. You should really expect them to be able to say what a working person is. We all know what a working person is, and these are the hard-pressed people who look at the statistics of how many people who are not working are getting more money every month than they get for turning up and doing a job that they don't particularly like doing.
It's craziness. It's absolute madness, isn't it? That, you know, you earn far more money squeezing out kids and sitting under a blanket than you do actually going and, you know, doing a job. Let's talk about, this is a sort of a niche story, but it's an interesting one, which is Kent County Council, which is now under the stewardship of Reform UK. Has voted for each meeting to begin with the recital of the Lord's Prayer and conclude with the singing of the national anthem. How very quaint. What do you make of that?
Well, they can do what they like, quite frankly, but if I was a resident in that council area in Kent, I want to know, are my bins being collected? Are the potholes being filled? I mean, great, if you're filling the potholes and singing God Save the King, carry on. But by goodness means, the priority in all of these things ought to be, what is the level of service and what is the level of my council tax? I want to see my council taxes being reduced. There again, when I was in the House of Commons, as you know, we had the prayers that start every session of Parliament. And I'm religious, right? So great. I absolutely love it. We didn't quite end up with singing God Save the King at the end, by the way, but nonetheless, I'm sure perhaps if Andy Burnham comes in, the King of the North, then we'll all be singing God Save That King.
Oh, no! I tell you what, is it true that Dennis Skinner used to be the most avid at getting down there for morning prayers and putting his little ticket on the green benches?
Yeah, he did. I used to be opposite him for a few years.
Yeah.
I mean, he was absolutely wonderful. I've got to tell you this story as well. When I fought the Ribble Valley by-election, as by-elections are current news these days, and it was the 13th safest seat in the land. And sadly, I lost because it was the poll tax by-election. And so the Lib Dems won, and I had to watch the swearing in of the new Lib Dem MP. Well, when he came into the House of Commons, into the chamber, he had to pass Dennis Skinner. And Dennis shouted out audibly, "Don't take the coat off, lad." And of course, he was absolutely right, because 12 months later, we had the general election. I was in, and I was in for 32 years. And I went up to Dennis after I got elected, and I said, "Dennis, I was almost crying that day. I was really heavy-hearted. You cheered me up no end."
I loved him, the old beast of Bolsover. They don't make left-wing politicians like that anymore, do they? It's proper old school. We've actually, by the way, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to be speaking to leader of Kent County Council in the next segment, so we can ask what is behind this. I must admit, I'm all for it. I love it. I just think it's one of those things, it sets a tone. Focuses the mind. In my mind, it's just like a little bit of mood music behind the sort of real reason why people do that job, for service to country. And, you know, I believe that if it all begins with God, then you're definitely going to be walking in the right direction. But anyway...
I agree with you. I agree with you.
And it's not like it costs any money. It's just sort of a nice British patriotic thing to do. I'd make all schools do the same, quite frankly.
By all means, just get the services right, but by all means, I mean, absolutely. As I said, I was always there when I was in the chamber for the prayers, which I heartily believed in, and it was actually a lovely bit of meditation as well before the hurly-burly of whatever questions were going to come in afterwards. If you remember as well, because I'm old enough, that when the BBC used to shut down, they always used to play the national anthem at the night.
Does Radio 4 still do that at midnight? I have a feeling it might. I don't know.
I hope so. Yeah, I don't listen to the BBC, as you can only imagine.
Well, it's very sensible one. I was going to say I'm asleep by then most of the time. Right, and let's now talk about... Well, this is a very interesting one. Let's talk about what was cooking in Angela Rayner's kitchen, because there have been 5 arrests in the Labour Party of people who allegedly were involved in a form of electoral fraud, which was standing fake candidates in order to split the vote and therefore sort of usher in Labour Party candidates. That is the allegation. This is relating to Tameside Borough Council in the heart of Rayner's constituency of Ashton-under-Lyne. One of the people who was arrested, Labour candidate Ataul Razul, former vice chairman of the Ashton-under-Lyne Labour branch, is apparently the one who might have been... Apparently he was a bit of a protege of Angela Rayner and might well have been in her kitchen discussing this particular plot, although she vehemently denies it. The Labour Party have put out a statement saying there's no evidence for this. We categorically reject any suggestion that the party was involved. But the thing is, Nigel, look, you know, I know anybody who's been involved in politics, been to election counts in certain parts of the country, seen certain results, know that there has been, you know, collusion in order to get the most out of the Muslim voting bloc for an awfully long time now.
Well, I got to tell you as well that I always remember during my first term in Parliament, John Major was the Prime Minister, and as you only can imagine, with a majority of 21, which dwindled to minus something by the end of John's term. And I used to say to my whips, can we try something that's not been tried before in Parliament? And he said, what's that? I said, how about trying some popular policies? We clearly haven't tried it over the past 5 years, and that's why we're languishing in the polls. And of course, we got beaten up truly in the 97 general election when Tony Blair strode into number 10 Downing Street. And it's the same in Tameside. If this was the intention of anybody to try and put up false candidates in order to split the opposition votes, it didn't really work, did it? Because they did very badly in Tameside, from what I recall from the local election results. But I mean, my advice... my advice would have been to Keir Starmer, although we know he's toast now, so it's maybe too late for this advice. But my advice to anybody, and to Burnham, if he does become the next Prime Minister of our country, is why don't you stick to your manifesto promises on which you got elected on, and don't renege on things like you say you're going to help the WASPy women and you don't, you say you're going to help the hospitality industry and then you clobber them with a higher minimum wage and higher business rates and a higher national insurance. You know, you say that you're going to help old age pensioners and then you take away their winter fuel payments. You know, when Keir Starmer, when he gets dragged kicking and screaming from Downing Street, he's going to say, hold on, we've got law that says no fault evictions. Well, I got news for you, Keir. You are very much at fault, and it'll be the same with these local authorities all over the country. It's that they forget who put them into power. And all you're going to do is basically do what you say that you are going to do during the general election or local elections, whatever they happen to be, but you've got to deliver. And if you don't deliver, then absolutely the electorate are going to absolutely smash you in the ballot box.
Yeah. Well, I just think if they were able to deliver on the sort of 3 necessities, the 3 primary obligations of any government, what I'm going to call the 3 Fs, they might find they curry more favour with the general public, and that is food, fuel and frontiers. But they can't seem to defend our borders. They're concreting our oil wells over, which is the sort of thing Putin would love to do given half the chance. And they're, you know, attacking farmers left, right and centre, where we basically don't have any food security anymore. Those are the necessities. Instead, they do all of this other stuff around the side, which all the lanyardy related stuff, which nobody wants.
I think they got a bit waylaid, Alex, because, of course, as you know, the Prime Minister on a very healthy 6-figure salary was getting all his clothes supplied by Lord Ali. And then, of course, it seemed as if most of the cabinet were obsessed with Taylor Swift tickets. I mean, they literally, and all you get from Keir, and I love this, I've got a working class family. I can remember what it was like, you know, how poor we all were. Really, I suppose in those days he didn't pick up the phone to Lord Ali and say, how about some designer glasses and a lovely German street suit, please? In the vast majority of people that you and I know, they've got their income coming in, they pay their taxes, they work hard, And that's what they live. They live within their means. This government has never lived personally within their means.
No.
Nationally not within their means either. As I say, Rachel hasn't got the faintest idea. And the level of debt that we're having to finance every year, we should be trying to pay down that debt when there's any taxation coming in. And the only way you're going to do it is by growing the economy. And they've done everything counter to growing the economy.
Oh, they've scared the economy back under a rock, it seems. Do you know, it's interesting when Sir Keir Starmer does all this son of a toolmaker. Anybody who's been to Oxted knows full well it's hardly a sinker state. Nigel, it's been so delightful. It's been wonderful catching up with you. Let's do it again soon. The brilliant Nigel Evans there. Now, listen, if you want to get involved, then this is the number that you need to know. 0344 499 1000. It's your normal network rate if you want to give us a call and have a chin wag. You can also send me a WhatsApp using that number. 8722 is the number to send a text message. Write the word talk before you text. Now, after the break, we're actually going to be joined by the leader of Kent County Council. And I'm going to be asking her about bringing back the Lord's Prayer and the National Anthem. But I will also be cross-examining her on how well the promises of doging that council have been upheld. That's coming up just after this. Is a
Chris O'Dowd! When you get the offer to be the voice of a sheep.
Yes, you can only dream, really.
Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser. Well, how much of Rip does your husband in real life have about him?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's mad.
He's Kirsty and Phil!
Can we talk about one other thing?
We can talk about loads of things. It's an interview.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning.
I've got some breaking news here. The Crowborough Army Training Camp could hold male asylum seekers all the way until 2030.
Good.
After the Home Office claimed it would only be for 12 months. Not much ambition involved in that, is there, in terms of solving the migrant crisis?
Absolutely, and the way that the Labour government gaslit the public when the migrants were first moved in there, saying, you know, you guys are absolutely being mad. Crowborough
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Now, I'm going to begin this segment with the Lord's Prayer. Actually, I'd love to do that. That's really up my strata. But world of broadcast, it's a fast-moving world. I don't have time, I'm afraid, to recite some of the greatest words ever crafted. But they're doing this now at Kent County Council, an initiative since Reform UK took over the governance of that particular county council. We can now speak to the leader, Lyndon Kemcaran. Lyndon, thank you so much for coming on the programme. Now, what has is the sort of philosophy behind this? Because people listening might be like, oh, for crying out loud, just, you know, get the bins and fill in the potholes. Why do you think that this is going to actually help in performance of duties as councillors?
Well, I must just stress, saying the Lord's Prayer is not going to stop us, you know, doing our very, very important council business, which we were elected to do. Let me just make that clear. What it is, Alex, is at the beginning of each council meeting, you know, council meetings can get very, very testy. There are often insults thrown, not from my side, I hasten to add, from the opposition. Insults, slurs, you know, in the March council meeting, all the opposition walked out. You know, things can get a little bit tasty in that chamber. And I thought, what better way to start the session than having a moment of quiet reflection and unity in that council chamber, where everybody in there just pauses. What does it take? 45, 50 seconds to say the Lord's Prayer? We pause, we listen. You don't have to say anything. We're going to invite clergy, a different clergy every time, to take us through it. The cameras won't be on the members. They'll be on the person saying the prayer. What better way to start off an important council session than having a moment of unity and togetherness and that appreciation that, you know, there are higher powers than us there in that council chamber. You know, to me, that sets the tone for the session ahead.
I mean, look, on this one, I totally agree with you, because I am a dedicated Christian, and I sort of feel like missing prayer in the mornings, a bit like skipping breakfast. My day doesn't start on the right footing. You know, it is that wonderful opportunity to reframe things, that you're not in it for yourself, that there is a greater good out there, and to actually sort of ask, which is what you do in the Lord's Prayer, ask for that guidance, ask to not be, you know, tempted by things, to have a posture of forgiveness, etc. So, look, I think it's a wonderful thing, but have you got any backlash from opposition councillors for this? Have there been the sort of usual screaming banshees going, "Ow, it's exclusionary, it's not very inclusive for," you know, whatever it is?
Oh yeah, we had all that, and I expected that, to be honest, because, you know, the opposition, and this is what's gone wrong with politics in this country in the last 25, 30 years. They're so keen to bend over backwards to get votes from wherever they think they can get them. They're so keen to accommodate everything. They end up believing in nothing. And I think that's sort of why we're in this mess. You know, yes, I understand that not everybody is a Christian, obviously, but fundamentally, we are a country that is based upon, a tradition, a Judeo-Christian heritage that goes back thousands of years. All of our institutions, all of our laws, you know, the Magna Carta, everything is based upon the Christian fundamentals. And I don't think that's a bad place to start council business from. But yeah, we had it all thrown at us yesterday, you know, as you would expect. But we've got used to that in Kent. And do you know what? They fail to land a blow most of the time. So that's absolutely fine.
Good. The lanyardists, as I now call them, all these blimmin' lefties and their isms. Now, listen, I would be failing, it'd be an abrogation of my duty if I didn't challenge you over certain things, which is that going into, not the most recent local elections, but the local elections prior to that, the big noise, the big top line from Reform was all about doging local authorities. We're going to do audits, we're going to cut budgets, we're going to save you your hard-earned cash, we're going to drag our councils back from financial annihilation. How is that going? Because the Liberal Democrat leader at Kent County Council described your last budget as a casino budget. He says that you've lost control with a forecast overspend of £36.5 million, and that you're putting up council tax by 3.99%, despite promising not to raise it at all. I mean, is it the case that the party made promises, they had sort of, you know, eyes bigger than their stomachs, so to speak, before gaining power, made promises that when they actually then are behind the levers, you know, the operating levers, suddenly realise they're not going to be able to deliver? What's happening here?
No, not at all. I dispute, all of that, actually. So first of all, we never promised not to put council tax up at all. We said our overall aim upon getting into office was to lower taxes, and that's exactly what we've done in Kent. When you realise what we inherited from the Conservatives, who'd been in charge of Kent for 28 years, they left us a terrible financial legacy, £732 million of debt we inherited.
Right.
In 1 year, we have got that down to 590 million. We've saved 142 million pounds in a year. Now, let me tell you what that means for council taxpayers. We were paying every day in debt interest payments alone when we took over this time last year, £84,000 every day in servicing that debt. We've got that down by £3,200 a day. And over a year, that saves us £1.2 million. And that's net. That is net. Okay, that is a good result. And that is largely thanks to our Dolge team. And we inserted the L into Doge to make it about local government. I could give you a whole list of things that our Dolge team has allowed us to do. But overall, it is about getting that long-term debt down, because anyone watching this will know if you've got a massive debt hanging over you, that influences how you spend your money, how you allocate any spare that you have, how you can do long-term planning for bigger projects. You know, so getting that debt down was the first thing I wanted to do, and I'm delighted to say we've done it, and that enabled us to not raise council tax to the fullest amount, which the Tories were planning to do, 4.99%. They had baked into their budget, which we inherited. We've managed to get that down a full 1%. So every 1% in Kent means £10 million. So I had to find extra savings of £10 million in our in-year savings to allow me not to put council tax up by the fullest amount. I think that's a great achievement.
Now let's talk about something else, which is when you declared an illegal migration emergency, a motion put forward by Reform UK councillors stating that Kent County, rightly actually, is a frontier for the influx of illegal migrants, and residents were having to deal with the consequences. It seemed to cause quite a bit of consternation from the other parties in the county council. Tell us more about what then happened.
Well, they tried to get our motion thrown out because they said because there was a by-election coming up in Kent in the next few weeks, we couldn't debate anything political in the chamber. I mean, you know, there's always a by-election happening somewhere. If that were the case,
you'd
never get any council business done.
chamber. You're not allowed to talk about anything political.
Well, yes. So we said that's fine. We don't have to be political about it, but we need to debate the fact that illegal migration is having a massive impact on residents in Kent, not just in terms of cost, but in community cohesion, in crime. You know, the effects are mostly negative in Kent. So we produced a paper because we're proper intelligent politicians. We produced a properly researched, independently verified paper that discovered that every single household in Kent was now paying £600 a year towards illegal migration. Now, you won't find those figures anywhere else because guess what? The government doesn't want us to know. So we extrapolated those figures very carefully, very precisely. So we said to the opposition, fine, we won't be political. Let's just debate the facts in this paper. And do you know what? They couldn't handle it because all they like to do is get emotional and start calling us Nazis and bigots and fascists and, transphobes and homophobes, the whole lot. And because they weren't allowed to do that, they walked out. It was absolutely astonishing.
Indeed, including the Conservative Party.
All of them.
Right.
The Conservatives, the Lib Dems, the Greens, Restore, and an independent person. They all walked out together. They are the uniparty, Alex. They are the uniparty. Reform UK is the only party standing up against the blob that has been running, and I may say ruining this country for the last 30 years.
Lyndon, thank you ever so much, and quite short notice actually coming to join us on today's programme. I really do appreciate you giving up your time to be here. OK, we're going to be taking a short break now. I've been waiting for this segment because I think this is going to be quite a spicy one coming up here. We're going to be joined by the brilliant Raja Meyer, who knows a thing or two about the sort of electoral malpractice that goes on in certain constituencies up and down the country. He is going to be giving you the unvarnished truth after this break, but after that there'll be an opportunity for us to gather together and have a little discussion about all the things that we have brought to the table today. Everybody's invited, so if you want to be part of that, the number is 03444991000. It's your normal network rate. I can't wait to speak to loads of you, so don't be shy. especially if you've never called before. Why not make this the day that you do that? 8722 is the number to send me a text message. Please do write the word talk before you send your message. That way it knows how to come down the right pipelines to land in this studio and doesn't scare someone witless at Times Radio because we're more right-wing than them. Right, with that housekeeping done, I'm going to be taking a short break, but I hope to see you on the other side of it. Back in a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, welcome back to the show. Now, we have been discussing throughout the programme this rather astonishing story. It should be making massive headlines across the legacy media, is it? No, of course it isn't. No, because this is quite serious, what is being suggested here. That Angela Rayner is now embroiled in a row linked to alleged electoral fraud at a local council. Now, no one's suggesting Angela Rayner was using electoral fraud to get herself elected, but 4 men and a woman were arrested on Thursday morning on suspicion of conspiracy to defraud. That's according to Greater Manchester Police. The claims are that fake independent candidates were entered onto the ballots for Thameside Borough Council, which is the heart of Rayner's constituency of Ashton-under-Lyne, with the express purpose to split votes for opposition parties. So you throw a few more contenders in there, dud ones, who'll suck up a few votes and take them off these other people. Now, this plot was allegedly cooked up in Angela Rayner's kitchen. And one of the characters involved was Labour candidate Atta Ul Razul, who's a former vice chairman of the Ashton-under-Lyne Labour branch, who did actually succeed in being elected after beating the second place candidate Ahmed Mahmoud, who is an independent. So there you go. If they were creating independent councillors to take votes off independent councillors, then perhaps actually, if it did happen, the plot worked. But this isn't new in British politics. I remember back in my early years when I was UKIPing, there was a by-election at Peterborough. And UKIP had fielded a brilliant candidate. In fact, he looked set to potentially win that seat, which had been a huge scalp at the time for UKIP. And yet there was a character at that count who, for the Labour Party, who had previously been in prison for postal vote fraud. And I just remember being at the count and all the sort of, you know, all the votes come in and you look like you're doing well, and you can do it visually from the stacks of papers. They come in from the polling booth and you've got a stack looking like this on one side and that bit, and you can just go, oh, wow, look like we're in the lead. Then all of a sudden, the bags came in with the postal votes and the game changed completely. Now, someone who knows a heck of a lot about this, because I've spoken to him on a little sort of sidebar about such things, is the brilliant Raja Maya. He joins us now. Raja, great to have you on the programme. Now, this is not exactly news for you, is it? Because you know that this stuff has been going on, particularly, one might suggest, in what have historically been Labour-dominated areas with a particularly high Muslim vote.
Absolutely, Alex. This is a common practice. Electoral fraud is common practice, sadly, in Labour Party constituencies, Labour Party wards with a high Muslim demographic, specifically a high Pakistani demographic, with the underpinned by the Brotherly system. What you're seeing here, Alex, essentially, not just in Tameside, but across the country, is a Pakistani civil war. And it's a civil war that has arisen as a consequence of two factors, really. One is the fallout from Gaza and the Labour Party, the Muslim split over the Labour Party position on Gaza, and Keir Starmer's refusal initially to call it a genocide or whatever happened after, is it October the 7th and stuff. And the one faction saw it as an opportunity to pounce, and pounce they have. They've now got sectarian MPs in Parliament, and they've got a wave of councillors elected across the country. Some are independent and some have aligned themselves with the Green Party. Now, what's took place here in Tameside is the country is now seeing tactics that have been deployed for a long time by the Labour Party, but unfortunately no one has spoken out against it, because it was the Pakistanis within the Labour Party deploying tactics that benefited the Labour Party, so there was no need for anyone in the establishment to speak out. And people like you or I who would speak out would be generously perhaps said, unhappy losers, sore losers, or we would be racist. Now, what happened in St. Peter's Ward, which is a predominantly Muslim sort of area, is that in Angela Rayner's kitchen, a plan appears to have been cooked up, and that plan was to front two imaginary or false opposition candidates with a view of, one was white, a woman called Marie Fairhurst, and the idea behind that was that it would take votes away from Reform. And then another one was this Muhammad Ali. No one's gone and found who this Muhammad Ali is. It's the equivalent of John Smith as a candidate on the, in an English area. And that was to take Muslim votes away from the independent
So it's a
candidate.
suggestion these people didn't even exist.
No, Muhammad Ali, from what I can work out, no one's gone and found them. They found Marie Fairhurst. She has no idea what's gone on. We talk about postal vote fraud and how postal votes are intercepted. Well, now this is one step beyond that.
Right.
This is fronting candidates fraudulently.
That's crazy. I mean, postal vote fraud is something I've been well aware of for about 20 years. Now we've got, it's always, things are always named in a nicey way. Family voting, as if it's like a little day out at the park. Now we've got, fake candidates. Talk to us about, especially, let's go back to postal vote, because that seems to be, in my mind, the one that has sort of garnered the most success over the years. How does it actually work? What are the mechanics of all of this? How are they, as a community, coming together and dominating the political space so much?
You can clearly see by the candidates that come forward, they are clan leaders. They are clan leaders who come forward, Bravery clan leaders. And the clan system facilitates, it's counter-democratic, it's counter what we know as democracy. Clan leaders, family leaders collect votes and then hand them in. Sometimes they're not even, there's no X marked on it. They just hand them in and then they're bartered between clans. All you have to do is sign the document. You saw Sabana Mahmood is now in trouble. And again, that's a story that's not making the airwaves that it should do.
Oh, the two different handwritings.
Yeah, so all of that is been endemic in our country with the Mirpuri community, with the Pakistani Mirpuri community specifically. And the chickens are now coming home to roost because the Labour Party no longer are the only ones that benefit from it. And those who oppose it, who are opposing the Labour Party, are deploying the same tactics. And they're saying, well, you've done this. No, you've done this. They're both at it, Alex. Both factions are now at it. And our democracy has been corrupted, has been comprehensively corrupted by these people.
Now, of course, there was an investigation into allegations made against Shabana Mahmood, and that investigation said that there was no wrongdoing. But let's talk about whether you believe, Raja, that political parties know full well that this stuff is going on. In fact, are they involved in it directly, do you think?
100%. I'll quantify this. I always try and quantify everything, Alex. And the Shabana Mahmood story is a Shabana Mahmood story. Only she knows why her signatures don't match. You know, those are the facts. The signatures didn't match. For me, what happens is there are 3 layers before a candidate's name goes on the ballot paper. The first one, if you're in a political party, is that the branch, the branch has got to nominate you. There are plenty of instances across this country documented where branches have been suspended by the Labour Party because they risked the approved Biradari candidate from winning. So the approved Biradari candidate might have lost to this other faction, so the Labour Party shut it down and prevented democracy from taking place. Those are matter of fact, Alex. I don't need to make any of this up. The second factor, pre the nomination, that I've seen frequently, first-hand witness myself, is that if someone came forward and said, I am going to stand, a visit would take place to their home late at night by a group of men, and then the following day that person will issue a statement or even release a video saying, oh, on reflection, it's best if I do not stand. In my own town, candidates who have stood have had their houses arson attacked. You know, reports in the local press, arson attack to the houses, the cars blown up to intimidate them from standing. And now what you've got is a new front. Let's create imaginary candidates.
This stuff is utterly deplorable. Democracy should be sacrosanct in this country. And as somebody who has worked both as a journalist and in elections abroad, I know full well some of the dirty practices that take place in the developing world, particularly countries such as Pakistan, where I don't think there's been an honest election since the country became a democracy, quite frankly. But we've imported all of this. And it seems to me there's a concerted effort because let's suggest both legacy parties, I don't know, certainly Labour, although I have heard from other people that the Conservatives in areas which are fewer than Labour Party...
Oh, they've dabbled in it. They have definitely dabbled in it, yes.
That's what I've heard. That because they've profited from this in their own constituencies, that frankly the other one wouldn't necessarily win in any way, then it's sort of a bit like a sort of deal, well, let's not talk about it. We're both gaining from it, so, you know, let's just sweep that under the carpet. But if it turns out to be true, and it's important to say that the Labour Party has said no evidence is being presented of any Labour Party involvement in these allegations, and we categorically reject any suggestion that the party was involved. You know, if the police investigation does show that this was cooked up in Raina's kitchen and she happened to be present at the time, I think this is incredibly serious. I think this is an incredibly grave allegation. You can bet your bottom dollar if the accusation was that Nigel Farage had been sort of inviting over, you know, whoever it may be, to sit in his kitchen and discuss how to rig an election to enable reform to win at local level, it'd be absolutely pilloried for it. And rightly so, but there seems to be a bit of a deafening silence, tumbleweed blowing across the TV screens in front of me right now. I haven't seen...
Because it's disgraceful. What's took place is disgraceful because the independent witness, the whistleblower, he's named himself, he's gone on record, isn't he? He's got nothing to lose here. It's the former deputy chair or something of the local branch of the Labour Party whilst he was in the Labour Party. This idea was concocted in her kitchen, and the facts follow through, Alex. Now, the police can investigate, and I have no trust in Andy Burnham's Greater Manchester Police at all when it comes to Labour Party candidates. Now, but it's the facts follow through. Marie Fairhurst did not sign her name on any document that put her forward as a candidate. Muhammad Ali, no one can find them.
Is she connected to the Labour Party, or did they just go through yellow pages and pick her at random?
Oh, I think, from what I can work out, she has some mental health issues or something. They've just gone and found someone. It's disgraceful. These people, but they've done it in such a way, Alex, and your viewers need to understand this. They've done it in such a way where they've always got away with doing what they've done. So this outrageous action has not come from nowhere. It's come from decades of, well, we can do whatever we want, and we've got away with it.
Well, the chickens are coming home to roost now, aren't they? Like you said, with the emergence of sectarian politics, all these, you know, imams, community leaders, clan leaders who have been allowed to rig our system for so long are suddenly going, great, we're going to rig it, but it ain't going to be in your favour, Labour. And that is terrifying to me, absolutely terrifying.
And you should be terrified, and our electoral system needs reform. Your party, the Reform Party, the name reform comes from the old Great Reform Act, and the old Great Reform Act was to stop widespread electoral fraud, the rotten boroughs, all of that. And 150 years later, we're in the same place. But what we've got is a group of people who've brought practices into our country that is completely alien to our systems and norms. And therefore, our systems and processes are unable to counter it. The family voting nonsense was going on in St. Peter's just as well. And this is men accompanying women to make sure that they put the cross where they're meant to. It's unacceptable, Alex.
Oh, what you're talking about is family voting. Sounds really cuddly and nice. A day, to go out and enjoy democracy together. Do you know, it's funny, I've seen video footage of councillors in certain areas, going door to door, and instead of wearing a Labour Party rosette, they're literally wearing PPK rosettes saying, we're your candidate from, the PPK in Pakistan. You just think, what? Mad.
And again, the international endorsement of candidates is normal in these communities, and the securing of ballot papers from Pakistan in a council estate somewhere in the United Kingdom, in one of these areas, that is also normal. The internationalization, the corruption. We are not set out to respond to this. Our systems, our processes, our legal system, and it needs reform, Alex. And we need to be honest. We need to be honest with ourselves and say these people are exploiting our democracy. They're undermining our democratic values. And it's like you said, these tactics worked elsewhere. Yeah. And they will work here and continue to work here because the mainstream media, the mainstream voices dare not speak out against it because it's a can of worms. Yeah. Because this is not a one-off incident, Alex.
This is the problem
all the time in these communities.
This is the problem, isn't it? The fact that because they've sort of profited from it, if, as it gets really bad in places like Birmingham and beyond, it's going to be very difficult for them to turn around and go, what? That's electoral fraud, because they'll turn around and go, yeah, you know a thing or two about that, don't you?
Yeah, you've been doing it for decades, haven't you? You know a thing of, yeah.
David in the Cotswolds says, seriously, when you have clan systems going on within cultures where the grooming of young, vulnerable white girls is considered normal, then what is a little bit of electoral fraud? And I know that you have campaigned on this for a long time.
Yeah, it's all interconnected. And I've campaigned, Alex, from the outset. I've campaigned we need reform in our electoral system. We need to ban postal voting. This is a product of Tony Blair. He introduced this postal vote system. A judge has confirmed it's been undermined. There were some minor adjustments done to it as a consequence of Eric Pickles' report. But those minor adjustments made no difference. I could go to an election in the next by-election, and I could go and collect 1,000 postal votes and sell them to whoever I wanted to, if I was of that way.
It's shocking. We just need to get rid of it unless in expressly limited circumstances. Yeah. This has got to be abolished. Now, before you go, I just want to read this. Raja deserves a knighthood, not the abuse he gets. I've been following him for a while. I subscribe to The Red Wall and the Rabble. He has done more for justice for the rape gang victims than anyone, and has explained how the Pakistani gangs and clans work properly. If he can't, who can? I agree. If if people out there aren't following Raja, do it now. The man is a trailblazer. He's one of the bravest men I've ever met. We're honoured to have him. He's just utterly fantastic. He's courageous. He does his research. He knows his stuff. And as you can imagine, the things that he is exposing puts his life in danger. So I applaud his conviction, his courage and his moral compass, because there are few men like that out there in the world today. All right. we are going to be taking a short break, and I'd love to hear from some of you guys after it as we wrap up the show. Let me remind you of the number. 03444 999 1000 is the number if you want to be patched through to the studio. It's your normal network rate. 8722 on the text, and 03444 999 1000 if you want to send a WhatsApp. I'm back after this. Quietly.
Chris O'Dowd! When you get the offer to be the voice of a sheep.
Yes, you can only dream, really.
Kelly Riley and Cole Hauser. Well, how much of Rip does your husband in real life have about him?
I mean, yeah. I mean, he's a man.
He's Kirsty and Phil.
Can we talk about one other thing?
We can talk about loads of things. It's an interview.
Wake up, it's a beautiful morning.
I've got some breaking news here. The Crowborough Army Training Camp could hold male asylum seekers all the way until 2030.
Good.
After the Home Office claimed it would only be for 12 months. Not much ambition involved in that, is there, in terms of solving the migrant crisis?
Absolutely, and the way that the Labour government gaslit the public when the migrants were first moved in there, saying, you know, you guys are absolutely being mad. Crowborough is a...
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and welcome back. Now, before the break, we were talking about, accusations alleging that there's been electoral fraud in the borough where Angela Rayner's constituency is. I'm just going to do my housekeeping and read all the statements in full, as I'm obligated to do. So let's begin with Greater Manchester Police. Following initial inquiries last week, we have launched a full investigation into the allegations. The work is specifically investigating the process of how candidates were put forward and represented in the ward, and if this adhered to the relevant legislation and electoral procedures. We're working closely with the Electoral Commission and local partners as part of our inquiries. Now, the Labour Party have also put out a statement. No evidence has been presented of any Labour Party involvement in these allegations. We categorically reject any suggestion that the party was involved. The local Labour team is focused on what really matters, delivering for residents and protecting services, not playing political games. We're unable to provide any further comment while police inquiries are underway. Now, I've got a bit of sad breaking news for you. TV presenter Judith Chalmers has passed away. Of course, she was best known for hosting ITV's travel show, Wish You Were Here. She died at the age of 90. Her family has said in a statement that she died peacefully at home on Thursday evening, surrounded by her family, after living with Alzheimer's in her final years. They said her health had been declining for some time and that she had become seriously ill in recent weeks, and the family had time to be together with her. R.I.P. Judith Chalmers. All right, shall we do a call now It's one of our favourites. It's Grace in London. How are you doing, Grace?
I'm privileged, thank you, but I think that most of the listeners probably really don't like me. But thank you.
I don't think that's the case at all. You're part of the furniture, and now give it a year, and you'll have your own show, Grace.
I wish. I was thinking. Oh, and first of all, condolences to the family of Judith Chalmers. In talking about toilets, not a topic I would necessarily choose to talk about otherwise, but I think it's really important to be kind to people, and also that being kind is not the same as always agreeing with everyone. I think one of the issues we have in our culture at the moment is it's kind of presumed that respecting someone and agreeing with them and endorsing is the same thing, but it's not, and we used to have a better understanding of that. Obviously, we believe that God can disagree with some of the things that we do and some of the things that we think, but also he loves us, and if we want to be caring and respectful to trans people, that doesn't actually mean that we need to agree with and endorse everything that they think about themselves, and it might not actually be the most loving thing necessarily, particularly if the wider policies impact on vulnerable women and girls. And I mean, interestingly, the trans person who I've communicated with most online, they feel really strongly that things like people demanding to have their bathroom or toilet of choice has actually just made things worse for a lot of trans people.
Oh, I think a lot of activism, it's often, weirdly, the activism's usually adopted by people who are nothing to do with the people who it affects. It's always a load of sort of screaming leftist women on campuses, rather than, it coming organically from the grassroots up from the trans community. Grace, thank you ever so much, my darling. We're running out of time. Hello, Ian.
Hello.
Are you a woman?
Thursdays.
All right, is it?
Just Thursdays. Because you can choose. You can pick and choose any kind of dimension or permutation you like. Judith Chalmers was a woman.
Judith Chalmers was definitely a woman. She was all woman.
We used to do a feature back in the day called Judith Chalmers in the Bahamas, and it was a stupid sort of late-night radio feature based on whether you've seen celebrities in places that are relevant to what they do. Had you ever seen David Attenborough in a zoo? That kind of stuff. And I can't remember.